All right, everyone, it is 6:30 and let me just do a check here. I believe our deputy clerk is here who is going to be assisting us this evening. And are you ready?
Indeed, yes.
Just ready. And we have welcome back our council attorney, Stephen Lucas, who is with us in addition to Ms. Heather Lacey. So glad to see everyone back with us tonight. Okay, let me call this meeting to order. This is the regular council meeting and for Wednesday, January the 12th. And we will begin by having our deputy clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Here.
Sims,
Here.
Bolin,
Here.
Scambolari,
Here.
Sandberg,
Here.
Rollo,
Here.
Flaherty,
Here.
Piedmont Smith.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will do a summary of our agenda for this evening. We have no approval for minutes today, so we will move right into reports from council members, followed by reports from the mayor's office, and I do believe we have only one, followed by council committees and the public comment at the beginning of our meeting, which will be up to 20 minutes for matters not on tonight's agenda. We will move then into appointments to boards and commissions, and that will include board and commission appointments for council. And we have many of those that will be on a slate to be determined, as well as one that is contested, before we move into any appointments for citizens on our boards and commissions. Moving then into legislation for second reading and resolution, we have two resolutions. The first is Resolution 22-03 to approve the interlocal agreement between Monroe County, the town of Ellisville, and the city of Bloomington for animal shelter operation for the year 2022. Second resolution is 2202 to establish 4 standing committees and abolish certain other standing committees of the Common Council. And then following the resolution of that resolution, there may be additional assignments for committees before we move into legislation for first readings, which include Ordinance 22-01, an ordinance establishing and approving the expanded outdoor dining program in the downtown corridor. Ordinance 22-02, amending Ordinance 21-37, which fixed the salaries of appointed officers, non-union and AFSCME employees for all the departments of the city of Bloomington for 2022 regarding COVID premium pay and creating a new position in the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development. Followed by Ordinance 22-03, amending Ordinance 21-36, which fixed the salaries of officers of the police and fire departments for the city of Bloomington for 2022 regarding COVID premium pay and retention pay. Followed by additional public comments. This is a period for up to 25 minutes of comments not on tonight's regarding items not on tonight's agenda, followed by a report on our council schedule. And then the regular session will adjourn, followed by the committee of the whole, which will be chaired by Councilmember Rollo. And I will leave it to him the discretion of at that time of the evening if we might need a short break for personal stretches. And so with that, we will now move to council reports. And I will begin with how I see you on the screen, beginning with Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes, thank you. I just want to express my appreciation to the executive director of Bloomington Transit. John Connell was very graciously gave up a good chunk of his Saturday afternoon to take part in my constituent meeting this past week and was very helpful to our residents. And I just want to express my appreciation for him making himself available. So thank you, John.
Council President Sandberg, may I interject real quick?
Oh, yes, please.
I believe with the new order, I may have omitted Councilmember Smith. I just want to acknowledge that I would like to call Councilmember Smith in the roll call.
Thank you, Ms. McDowell. I'm here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I completely missed that too, so thank you. Welcome, Mr. Smith. All right, and it's now your turn. Do you have a council report?
I have no report this evening. Thank you.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I guess the only thing that I would say this evening, Madam President, is to remind everyone that Monday there are a lot of activities happening for Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The city of Bloomington has an event starting at 7 p.m. at the Buskirk Chumley Theater that will also be available through CATS Community Access Television. Indiana University has a social justice conference on Sunday and Monday, and you do not have to be part of the university in order to participate. So I urge you all to check out those options. A Google search for either one will give you the details on those. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you, President Sandberg. I have no comments other than to piggyback on what Councilmember Isabel Piedmont Smith said. I had intended to announce all those as well, and I appreciate her in doing so. So hope to see you all in some form or fashion on Monday in celebrating the Dr. Martin Luther King birthday celebration. Thank you.
Thank you. On to Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, thank you. I had mentioned at the beginning of our regular session, the first meeting of the year last week, that I will generally be holding my constituent meetings at the same time I did last year, which is the third Monday of the month at 5:30 p.m. This month, as two of my colleagues just mentioned, is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday. So I have moved that constituent meeting to Tuesday at 5:30 p.m., just one day later, January 18th this month. And those details are updated on the council calendar and can be accessed at bloomington.in.gov/council. So just wanted to let folks know about that change this month. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you, Madam President. Just as a reminder that Council President Sandberg and I hold joint constituent meetings on the third Saturday of the month, and that the next one is this Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. via Zoom. And you may find the link at bloomington.in.gov/council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Volan.
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rosenbarger.
No report, thank you.
All right, and that concludes council reports. We will move on now to the mayor and city offices. And I don't know who all is here. It looks like Mayor Hamilton is here to do the honors. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, President Sandberg, and nice to be with you all. Happy New Year. Congratulations on your new service this year, new officers, et cetera. Look forward to working with you. Just very briefly, before I do my particular introduction tonight, I do think it's been quite a while. I should just mention the pandemic status in this public setting. I've done that periodically, and I will only very briefly note that we are headed into a quite difficult several weeks. I know many of you know the weekly press conference or bi-weekly press conference Friday. We update the community on that, but I think in this setting too, it's appropriate to just note how challenging the next few weeks are likely to be with the Omicron surge right in the middle. Just to give one set of data, about 8 weeks ago or so, we were well below 100 cases per 100,000 in the county, about 60. We got as low as that versus in the summer, we were in single digits. Our latest number, we are going to be over 1,000 compared to that 50 or 60 of several weeks ago. Cases per 100,000. The hospital is busier than they've ever been. There are more people on ventilators than they've ever had. And we know we still have substantial unvaccinated population that is at great risk from this. And all of us need to do all we can, especially over the next few weeks, to stay masked, protect each other by not sharing air if we don't have to with those that you don't live with. And just be super careful over the next few weeks, and encourage you to tune in to the Friday afternoon press conferences too. And thank a healthcare worker or an essential worker if you see them, because they're all struggling hard. So you know how proud I am of our people who work, as I know you are in city government, and doing so so steadily through the pandemic, and they continue that. We're incredibly proud of all the work they do. Tonight, I wanted to just give a special shout out to our legal department. Over the last 3 months, our intrepid city attorney, Mike Rooker, has served as acting corporate counsel very ably. I want to thank him publicly for that service. I know he served you too in that role, and he stepped up to do that, and we greatly appreciate that. He'll be continuing as city attorney. But I did want formally to introduce you to tonight on her 3rd day of service in the city, our new corporate counsel, Beth Kate. And I'm going to ask her to just say a few words of introduction to you. Many of you know her. We're very, very pleased to have Beth join the team. She is a very experienced attorney, both in the private sector and long tenure in the Corporation Counsel at Indiana University, also at the O'Neill School as an instructor, a great deal of wide experience, a Harvard University law graduate with real great talent and commitment to our community for many, many years. And we're just thrilled to have Beth Kate join us. You know the position of corporate counsel well. You interact with that position in substantial ways. So we just thought it would be helpful for Beth Kate to come say hello tonight and introduce herself. And then again, thank you, Beth, for joining us and for your whole terrific team in the law department.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hamilton, for that generous introduction. And Happy New Year to you all on the council. I'm delighted to be joining the really stellar legal team that the city has. And I will echo what the mayor said about Mike Rooker's service. It's been tremendous. In the 3 days that I have been on the job so far, he's already been invaluable to me, as have his colleagues. So I'm very honored to be able to join this team and to work with the city and for the city in new ways. I had the pleasure of interacting with a number of you from my service on the Plan Commission, and I enjoyed that very much and appreciated all of the wisdom that I received from colleagues in that role. Including you, Madam President of the Council, as a fellow member of the Plan Commission. So to all of the commissioners, thank you very much for hosting me today. And I am delighted to be working with you in the future, and I very much look forward to it. And I'm happy to say anything else about myself that you would particularly like to know, but I look forward to us getting to know each other a lot in the coming years.
Thank you very much, new corporate counsel, Kate. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for this report on our COVID status, as well as this introduction. So thank you both. All right, on now to council committees. Are there any reports from council committees? And seeing none, we now move into, oh, Councilmember Smith, I see your hand raised.
I just briefly wanted to say that the Community Development Block Grant Committee met the other day, and we heard public presentations of 12 applicants. The 12 applicants are requesting a total of $286,000, and we only have $130,000 to give out. So we're moving towards scoring, and we'll submit those scores to Mr. Toothman from the hand department by the 17th, and then we will proceed on. So I just wanted to give a brief update. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional committee reports from council members? All right, seeing none, we move to public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who would like to make a comment about anything not on tonight's agenda to raise their hand and to be recognized. And again, seeing one hand up at the moment, I will turn now to who's going to be helping us manage this evening. Is this?
I think it's a joint effort. I'm going to call on folks, and I believe that Mr. Lucas will run the timer for us.
All right, so who do we have who would like to make a public comment this evening?
Jim Shelton is able to unmute and should be able to speak.
All right, and everyone will have 5 minutes or up to.
Good evening, Council. Jim Selson with the Chamber, but speaking tonight on behalf of Court-Appointed Special Advocates, or CASAs. Want to make the public aware that CASA's winter training will start in just a few weeks. It will run from February 2nd through the 28th. It will skip President's Day. It'll be Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 5:30 to 8:30, and they have recently decided that it will be virtual. In light of Omicron, the last session was face-to-face, but this training session will be virtual. There's no special qualifications. You need to be a CASA. A CASA is a volunteer who works with children who are in the court system because their parents have abused or neglected them. They've been removed from the care of their parents and placed either with a foster care situation or with a relative, hopefully. And the CASA's job is to help the court manage the children and hopefully getting the children back with the parents. The goal was always first to have reunification. I have been privileged to have several just right before Christmas. A little 4-year-old guy was reunited with his mom and dad who had overcome their addictions. And he had been living with his grandmother for about 3 years. So most of his life he had been with grandma, but the parents had done what they needed to do and what the court had indicated they needed to do to be reunited. And they sent me a wonderful picture of him and them with Santa Claus. So it's a wonderful opportunity for people who would like to volunteer and help their community, work with children, help with children. You can get more information by going to monroecountycasa.org or go to 333-2272 and talk to the staff. The process is you would apply, and you need to do that pretty soon. If you're interested in this training opportunity, you'd be interviewed by the staff and you and they could decide if you think this is really for you. And then you would have, you'd have your background check and you would then be trained. You have no special qualifications needed to be a CASA. Just be someone who can communicate and is pretty, you have tenacity because things don't always work out really easily. And then you would have the training and they would train you in what you need to do. You'd be sworn in by Judge Galvin and Judge Harvey, and then you'd be assigned a case and you would work that case with a CASA staff person. So any little weird things you might run into, you would have that person to back you up. If you had couldn't attend a court hearing because of some family opportunity, that person could fill in for you. So I would ask people to think about it. We've probably right now, the last number I heard, we have 25 children who need a CASA and we don't have a volunteer for. And I'd ask people to think about stepping up and do this. I know there's people who have thought about it for a while, and this would be a good chance to really pull the trigger and really do it. So I thought about it for a number of years before I did it, and I'm glad I did. So thank you for the opportunity to spread the word. I hope people out there will hear this, and maybe several of them will take advantage of it. So thanks. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Shelton. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to make a comment this evening?
There are no other raised hands and there are no takers in the chat.
All right, very good. And of course, we all know that. Oh, do we see somebody?
I don't think that's a.
And most everyone does know the procedure that if you wish to raise your hand and speak on a matter not on tonight's agenda, this is your time to do that. You'll have ample time to speak on matters on the agenda when those items are introduced.
There is another raised hand, the person with the screen name, Nejla, who should be able to unmute and state their name.
Hello, my name is Nejla Routsong, and I didn't realize before that we could speak later for items on the agenda. I have something to say on something on the agenda later, so I'll wait for that time. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else on a matter not on tonight's agenda? Again, you raise your hand, you may message the host in chat. All right, and if we see no more.
There are no more takers.
Okay, so that will conclude our public comment. I'm going to do something a little unusual. I'm going to ask that we recess for just a few minutes, and it won't take me long. I'm having real computer issues with my internet connection. People are kind of glitching in and out. So I am going to exit this computer and try to come in on another. So if you don't mind, maybe just close your screen for a minute. I will join you as soon as I possibly can, hopefully with a better connection. Thank you. All right. Here I am back again, hopefully with a better connection, and my apologies for that interruption. We are now to the point of the meeting where we are going to consider appointments to boards and commissions. Again, we're going to begin with the council appointments to commissions. My understanding is that many of those have already been slated, and we want to hear about that, as well as then move to the one position, which is Plan Commission, which is contested. So, Mr. Parliamentarian, do we have a motion to proceed?
Yes, Madam President. We will need a procedural motion on our deliberations, and I move to suspend the rules to conduct appointments to boards and commissions in the following manner. A candidate for appointment to a board or commission may express their interests in the position without the need for a nomination or second by another member. All appointments to boards and commissions with only one nominee shall be determined by a single roll call vote, followed by a separate vote for each office with two or more nominees. Members may ask questions and discuss the nominations of any seat before a final vote is taken. And that motion has requisites of, it must be seconded. It requires, the suspension of the rules is neither debatable nor amendable, and it requires 2/3 majority to pass. So I will need a second.
Second.
All right, that has been moved and seconded. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, I just got back. What am I answering to?
the motion was to suspend the rules for the appointment of council members to boards and commissions.
Thank you. Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Scambolery,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Parliamentarian, do we actually have a slate that you need to move?
Yes, I move to appoint the following council members to the following boards and commissions. For the Citizens Advisory Committee, Community Development Block Grants, CDBG, Social Services for 2022 will be Council President Sandberg. Physical Improvements will be Councilmember Rosenbarger. The Commission for Downtown Bloomington will be Councilmember Scambolery. The Economic Development Commission for the city is Councilmember Flaherty. The Economic Development Commission for the county is Councilmember Smith. The Parking Commission is Councilmember Volin. The Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission for the county is Councilmember Rallo. Public Safety Local Income Tax Committee, the County Local Income Tax Council will be made up of Councilmember Piedmont Smith, Councilmember Sims, Councilmember Scambaluri, and Council President Sandberg. The Solid Waste Management District is Councilmember Piedmont Smith. The Board of Urban Enterprise Association, the BUEA, is Councilmember Rosenbarger. The Environmental Resources Advisory Council is Councilmember Rallo. The Utility Service Board is Councilmember Sims. The Bloomington Economic Development Corporation will be appointed Councilmember Scambaluri. And the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, Councilmember Flaherty. And the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the council appointment will be Councilmember Volin.
All
I will
right.
second.
Yes, there's a second for that. Is there any further discussion on that? And seeing none, will the deputy clerk please call the roll on these appointments?
Councilmember Sims,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Scambaluri,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
and Rosenbarger.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. We will now move on to the one contested race that we have for Plan Commission. And we have two candidates for that position. And as has been our practice, we will start in the alphabetical order with, let's see, that would be Councilmember Piedmont Smith making her statement.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam President. There are three main reasons why I request that my colleagues support me to serve as the City Council representative on the Plan Commission for 2022. First of all, my knowledge and experience. I was intensively involved with revisions to the Comprehensive Plan, the Transportation Plan, and the Unified Development Ordinance in the last few years. I authored dozens of amendments to improve each document, and most of these were adopted unanimously by my council colleagues. I'm very familiar with these documents that guide the Plan Commission's work. Furthermore, I've attended 2 international conferences on planning issues and multiple training sessions for Plan Commission and council members. The second reason I request your support is my proven communication skills. I have served on the Plan Commission in the past, and of course, I've served in other positions as well. And whatever position I serve in, as far as representing the City Council, I have communicated back to the council when major decisions are coming up. For example, when I served on the Plan Commission previously, I would reach out to colleagues in whose districts petitions were coming forward to Plan Commission to make sure everybody knew what was happening. And I pledge to do the same if I'm selected this year. And thirdly, one of the main issues coming to our Planning and Transportation Department in this year and the coming years is what's going to happen on the old Bloomington Hospital site. And I represent District 5, which is just south of this site. And so my constituents will be directly impacted by whatever decisions the Plan Commission makes in regard to that area. So I request on that ground as well to be able to serve on the Plan Commission this year. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. And now we will move to Councilmember Smith for his statement.
Thank you, President Sandberg. On November 21st in 2021, I declared my interest in being the next Council Plan Commission representative. During my time on the Bloomington City Council, I've tried my best to observe what the Plan Commission does, how it impacts quality of life in the city, and how it must operate according to statute. The Commission must act in an advisory capacity to the Common Council for rezoning, preliminary PUDs, and amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance. Plan Commission also advises the Common Council on the adoption of and amendments to the comprehensive plan. And these are roles and activities that I'm very pleased to be involved with, and I hope that that is something that it's communicated to everyone on the council what I'm doing and how that applies to each of the areas. District 3, the east side, is going to continue to be involved in development this next year with the pressure of the new hospital. Additionally, annexation is going to bring development pressures across the areas that touch us all. I'll work to be a strong advocate and voice for neighborhoods, as well as an advocate for the views of the council as a member of the Plan Commission. This last year, I had several firsthand experiences as it related to the Plan Commission, the Kmart development, the Curry project, the new hospital, and Osage Place developments, to name a few. As a social worker, I have experience training in building bridges and taking on different tasks that address areas of common interest. As a previous state government employee, I've had to work in complex regulatory environments. And as a council member, I've been honored to listen and be a voice for citizens that otherwise may not have been heard. Council member Piedmont Smith, who also seeks the Plan Commission, also has the needed experiences to be an excellent council representative to the plan. I know she'd be a really great Plan Commission representative too. Today, however, I come before you, my council colleagues, to ask for your vote, and I pledge to represent the council's views to the best of my ability as a member of the Plan Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for your statements. At this time, we will entertain questions for both or either of the candidates. And I see the first hand up from Councilmember Boland.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to ask Councilmember Smith a question because something in his speech raised a flag for me. Mr. Smith, you say that the Plan Commission acts in an advisory capacity to the council. Is that the limit of its domain? Because my understanding is that the Plan Commission can make some decisions independent of the council.
Well, I believe that the answer is yes, that they can make some independent actions on their own, but my role as representative, in my view, is to communicate that to all 9 members of the Common Council and advise them of what's going on and how that impacts, the development.
Okay, so I guess you're talking about 2 different things, though, that you plan to be advisory to the council, but you understand that the Plan Commission actually has independent authority to make some decisions.
I do.
That involve land use.
I do.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Additional questions for any of the candidates? And I am not seeing any hands come up. So at this time, are we prepared to call the question on who the next representative for the Plan Commission will be? Looks like we are. And of course, when we take this roll call vote, when your name is called, you will cite the name of the person that you wish to see serving in that capacity. So, Deputy Clerk, will you please call the roll on the Plan Commission appointment?
Councilmember Woolen,
Piedmont Smith.
Scambolery,
Smith,
Sandberg,
Smith,
Rallo,
Councilmember Smith.
Flaherty,
Piedmont Smith.
Smith,
Smith,
Piedmont Smith,
I will vote for myself, Piedmont Smith.
Rosenbarger,
Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Sims,
Councilmember Ron Smith.
all right. And by my count, that goes to Councilmember Ron Smith with a vote of 5-4. And again, both individuals would certainly have served well, and congratulations to Councilmember Smith. All right, we move on now to any citizen appointments that we may have to boards and commissions. Are there any at this time? And I am not seeing any hands up. So we will now move on to our legislation for second readings and resolutions.
Madam President, I move that Resolution 2203 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
second,
That has been moved and seconded. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Scambolery,
yes,
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
yes,
Piedmont Smith,
Yes,
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Thank you. And will the deputy clerk now please read?
Resolution 2203 to approve the interlocal agreement between Monroe County, the town of Ellisville, and the city of Bloomington for animal shelter operation for the year 2022. The synopsis is, this resolution authorizes execution by the mayor and director of animal care and control of the animal shelter interlocal agreement for fiscal year 2022 between the city of Bloomington, Monroe County, and town of Ellisville. The agreement provides that Monroe County shall pay the city of Bloomington the sum of $342,912 for 2022 in return for the space the city provides to the county and services it renders on the county's behalf. The agreement further provides that the town of Ellisville shall provide the city of Bloomington the sum of $18,612 for 2022 in return for the space the city provides to the town of Ellisville and services it renders on the town of Ellisville's behalf.
Thank you.
Madam President, I move that we adopt Resolution 2203.
second,
All right, moving on to the presentation with us this evening, I see Mr. Virgil Souter. Please proceed. Thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening. Virgil Souter, Director of Animal Care and Control. So as you have heard, the city of Bloomington, Monroe County, and the town of Ellisville have agreed to renew the interlocal agreement for animal services for the year 2022. In the agreement, the city agrees to provide housing, care, redemption, adoption, and euthanasia services for animals from Monroe County and the town of Ellisville. In return, Monroe County and the town of Ellisville agreed to pay an amount based on data from the previous full year available while the agreement is being reached. The 2022 agreement takes the actual animal shelter program expenses from the year 2019 in an amount of $923,084, which is then reduced by the adoption revenue from that year of $102,622. That amount is then divided by the total intake from the year 2019 to obtain a cost per animal. For the year 2019, the amount was $282 per animal. The per animal amount is then applied to the number of animals taken in from the Monroe County and town of Ellisville in the year 2019 to arrive at the interlocal amount for the year 2022. For services provided in 2022, Monroe County and the town of Ellisville agreed to pay the city a combined amount of $361,524. The process for arriving at the agreed amount for services was same as in previous years. Both the town of Ellisville and Monroe County Commissioners have heard and signed on to the agreement. I will note that the percentage of intake from county sources continues to remain fairly stable over the years, as do the percentage of animals brought in to our shelter from sources outside of Monroe County. Our shelter program expenses have increased substantially in the year 2019 and 2020. I'm sorry, I just realized I had the wrong, when I was previously mentioned the year 2019, that should have been the year 2020 for where the data was resolved. My apologies for that. So for the 2022 agreement, the data came from the year 2020. Our shelter program expenses did increase substantially in the year 2020 due to increased costs of veterinary services combined with an increased need for those services for animals in our care. As the shelter continues to focus on maintaining our highly live release rates, this increase of cost is likely to continue in the coming years. I would be happy to answer any questions about the interlocal agreement that the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. We will now go to council questions. If there's anything we need to get answers to, Councilmember Scambolari.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Mr. Sutter. And thank you for my two friends that I adopted from the animal shelter, as a matter of fact. So they're somewhere behind me. Two quick questions. You mentioned the actual adoption revenue amount of $102,622. That adoption revenue remains with the city, correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct. The adoption revenue does remain with the city. We just subtract that amount from the total figure of what's spent to arrive with our agreement. Got it.
Thank you. May I ask a second question, or would you rather I wait, Madam President?
Let's see if anyone else has one before we ask for your, yes, Councilmember Rollo.
Thank you, Director Souter. I recall that we take animals from other counties, but we apply a fee. And could you discuss that in terms of how many, what kind of intake you get, and what's the fee? It used to be, I think, $20 per animal. Has it been raised, or?
The fee has not been raised. It is the same. We roughly get in somewhere between 12% to 15% of our overall intake over the years have come from extra county sources. And that tends to be fairly stable. In 2020, find my data sheet. We took in a total of 350 animals from out of county sources.
And just curious about that a little bit. Is anyone turned away if they come, they present an animal to the shelter and they're told they have to pay a fee? Does anyone leave at that point without paying the fee and taking the animal with them?
Yeah, it has happened. It is very rare. My staff do.
Mr. Souter, you have somehow muted yourself. We need to hear you.
My apologies. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So it is very rare that somebody leaves without paying that amount. It has happened occasionally. Our staff are good at counseling individuals when they come at seeking other sources. We have implemented a courtesy posting where individuals can post animals that they need to rehome on our website to help get that information out as well. Our staff is further trained if it feels like the animals are in danger or there is a need for desperate services. We will work with an individual to take them in.
Thank you.
Additional first round questions. Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Souter, for the report. Just simply for me, with adoption income and projected for 2022 be 102,622, and we see it for the rest of the years. But my question is, what are the elements that make up this adoption income?
Yeah, so the adoption income is just direct adoption fees. So that's the amount that people are paying either for animals they are adopting or are paying for other people to adopt them free of cost.
Okay, thank you. So that's just it, just the adoption fee itself. Yep. There's no, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Additional first round. And seeing none, let's go back to Councilmember Scamblori.
Yes, thank you. And you've already done some of this, but Mr. Sauter, I wonder if there are just any particular trends or items that we're very proud of or items we have concerns about that you'd like to draw our attention to.
When it comes to animals coming into the shelter, housing is one of the biggest things. Animal-friendly housing does drive a lot of our intakes from owner sources. So that's always a concern. Locally, we haven't seen an increase in intake to date that we were fearing with a lot of COVID-related evictions that have been seen nationally. So that's a good thing. I'm also very proud of my staff. And the volunteers in the care. Our live release rate for 2021 was 94%. So that's animals leaving the shelter either through adoptions, redemptions, or transfers to rescue groups versus animals that have been through those sources and euthanized. So I'm very proud of that level that we've been able to maintain over the last few years. And our adoptions have continued to drive that rate higher and higher each year.
And is there a national benchmark for that? Is there a national average?
There isn't a national average that's been tracked. What the national drive rate is for shelters is to do a minimum of a 90% live release rate and up is considered having good quality programs. Being an animal control agency dealing with also public safety aspects will never be probably in the high 90s because there are animals that we will have to make decisions on based for euthanasia based on public safety.
Okay, but thank you. And thank you for your good work. So.
All right, additional second round questions. And seeing none from council, we now go to the public for any comment on resolution 2203.
I see a raised hand, person with the screen name Jeff McKim, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council. My name is Jeff McKim, and I supported this interlocal agreement when it came across the County Council, and I encourage you to all support it now. This is a terrific example for the public for how the city and county really can work together, which I know not everyone believes can be done. When I first came on the County Council 12 years ago, this agreement was actually very controversial, but through a lot of work by the staff on both sides, we've come up with an arrangement that's fair and predictable and beneficial to all parties and has no longer been controversial. And of course, the animal shelter provides world-class service to the community that all residents of the county benefit from. So thank you for your support for this agreement.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment regarding the resolution before us.
I don't see any more raised hands, but I did have a question in the chat from the B Square Beacon. It says, I wasn't able to follow exactly the back and forth between Councilmember Rallo and Mr. Sauter. Could we get a clarification on what the fee for surrendering an animal to the shelter is? Is it the same or different for, for Bloomington or non-Bloomington residents?
All right, thank you very much. And I will trust that one of my fellow council members may follow up with that one. But let's stay with public right now and see if there are any additional public comments.
I do not see any other takers.
All right, so back to council then for clarification of any question or final comment. Councilmember Rallo.
Yes, Director Souter, could you talk about the fee structure again for clarification purposes?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So there is no fee for surrender for individuals from the city of Bloomington or Monroe County or the town of Ellisville for either owner surrenders or stray intake. We do charge a $20 per animal fee for out of Monroe County animals coming to the shelter.
All right, thank you for that clarification. And any other final comments from council or questions? And seeing none, we are ready, I believe, to call the questions. So may we have the deputy clerk? Oh, we have our clerk. Welcome, Ms. Nicole Bolden is with us to call the roll on resolution 2203.
Good evening. And yes, we will start with Councilmember Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
and Scambalori.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And resolution 22-3 passes 900. And we now move on to the next resolution on our agenda. Thank you.
Madam President, I move that resolution 2202 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
Scambalori,
Yes.
and Sandberg.
Yes.
Thank you.
And will the clerk please read?
Yes, I will. Resolution 2202 to establish 4 standing committees and abolish certain other standing committees of the Common Council. The synopsis is as follows. This resolution is authored by Councilmember Sandberg, Councilmember Scambalori, and Councilmember Sims, and establishes 3 interviewing standing committees and the Sidewalk Standing Committee, and dissolves various other council standing committees. Please note this resolution was revised after distribution in the legislative packet, but before introduction at the regular session on January 12, 2022. The revision removed a reference to the Utilities and Sanitation Committee in the 10th whereas clause of that committee was abolished by Resolution 2101.
Thank you.
Madam President, I move we adopt resolution 2202.
Second.
All right, at this time, since I am one of the sponsors of this resolution, I will now pass the virtual gavel to parliamentarian Councilmember Rallo.
Thank you, President Sandberg. I'd like to proceed in the following manner without objection. I'd like to have the sponsors introduce the resolution and then proceed to a first round of questions before we go to amendments. Then we will hear, I believe we have 2 amendments. And then, of course, we will have public comments on both the amendments and then the resolution if it is amended as amended at that time. So to begin with, I'd like to ask the sponsors if they would introduce resolution 2202.
Yes, thank you. I will go first. And we wish to make it clear that this, again, is a change in process and procedure for the council, not necessarily a change in any policy or any momentum that is currently underway. In bringing forward Resolution 22, 02, the sponsors recognize the critical importance of examining our legislative process and working toward improvements in how we craft legislation, engage the public, deliberate, manage our time, and communicate both internally and externally. The standing committee structure that was initiated at the beginning of this term was introduced and passed in good faith, and the last 22 months have provided opportunities to use these standing committees and assess their impact on the work of the council. It is our belief that as we begin this new year, we have an obligation to acknowledge several key limitations of standing committees and to refine our work processes accordingly. Specifically, it is the sponsor's belief that a return to using committee of the whole would allow us to accomplish the following. Allow all 9 council members to participate in discussions on legislative in real time and thus provide a more equitable, inclusive opportunity for dialogue. Aid in reducing confusion that results, particularly among the public, when multiple bodies all have a potential role in addressing a topic or piece of legislation. An example that we bring forward are the following 6 entities that could be involved in matters related to public safety: the Council Public Safety Committee, the Board of Public Safety, our newly formed CAPS Commission, Future of Policing Working Group, and the Dispatch Policy Board and PS-LIP. To reduce the number of meetings in which staff or legislative sponsors would need to offer duplicate presentations, and to streamline scheduling and simplify staffing demands. It is also the sponsor's belief that special committees can and should be formed as needed to study pressing issues, undertake specific tasks, initiate legislation, or otherwise advance the work of council on behalf of Bloomington residents. The sponsors acknowledge the differing and deeply held views of standing committees as an organizational tool for the council. At the same time, it is our belief that all council members share several core values, including equity, inclusiveness, and accessibility. We believe the committee of the whole is the better tool for operating in a way that is consistent with these values. And now I happily turn the discussion over to one of the co-sponsors, and who would like to be next? Councilmember Scamalori.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Sandberg has made a lot of the points, I think, that underscore another foundation for this particular resolution. But I would underscore one very important point too, and that's the tendency in some comments we've heard to equate the creation of a standing committee with the degree of importance we place around an issue. And I would point out that some of the most critical issues we deal with as council do not have a standing committee. Appropriation ordinances generally come before this entire body. The resolution condemning white supremacy came before this entire body. So while there are many tools we can use, choosing to use a special committee rather than a standing committee certainly doesn't diminish the importance of what we do around a particular issue. So I would offer that thought just to underscore some of what Councilmember Sandberg spoke to. I am happy to help answer questions as we go too, after Councilmember Sims shares his thoughts.
Thank you very much. And I want to thank my co-sponsors, and I think you've covered the meat of this legislation. I will, however, add, as many of you know, I was the immediate past president and of this council for last year. And one of the things that I observed and was pretty clear about is that a majority of the council members would prefer to use the committee of the whole for full council discussions on legislations. And I think that is the direction that we're going to now. We are simply going back to the way we operated before 2001. And I will make note that there has been some discussion about the standing committees and their importance. And I don't want to minimize or maximize either one of those at this point. I think the point is there are certain areas that the council wishes to focus on or work more in that area. And I will note that the council, there is a mechanism in order to form special committees. And that special committee can be formed for any specific purpose proper for council consideration. I envision that when the need comes, a special committee can hold public forums to seek further information on a particular topic. They can hold community meetings in order to get input from the community. So going to this resolution will not diminish our accountability and are willing to work with the public. And a fact that, again, I will say that I believe that it would be the majority preference of the members of this council. So thank you.
Thank you, sponsors of Resolution 2202. We'll now go to council questions. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to ask the sponsors why they have proposed to eliminate the standing committees when they could simply continue to refer items to the committee of the whole while still leaving the standing committees as a possibility in some cases or in the future.
Councilmember Scambolery, do you want to begin?
Yeah, I'll start. Thank you for the question, and it's a good one. It makes an enormous amount of sense. From my perspective, I think it is about reducing confusion. Councilmember Sandberg listed a number of groups that can all theoretically focus on an issue of public safety. I think one advantage of eliminating or discontinuing standing committees is that it becomes a good deal more clear that we have regular session and then committee of the whole and then regular session and then committee of the whole. I know there's confusion and some people say, well, gosh, regular sessions look an awful lot like committee of the whole. All 9 of you are sitting up there. And that's true. You know, there is some confusion about the difference between regular sessions and committee of the whole. I am inclined to believe, based on feedback I've heard, that there is more confusion that results when you layer in additional standing committees. And I think issues around public safety are a great example of that.
If I may add to that, there are many ways to accomplish the same goals. And again, this is a matter of council process, how we do our business. It in no way reflects a signal to diminish or undermine any good momentum that has already been underway with a good many of our standing committees, including climate action, which I will cite that one as one that all 9 of us are in agreement with our new climate action plan and the priorities that we all must place, not just in this coming year, but in decades to come. So this is just a matter of how we deliberate and how we make decisions and how we do that in a way that is respectful to ourselves as a body, to our staff who we need to coordinate matters with, as well as the city administration and the public, not least the public in understanding what's being discussed, how they can participate. We have many, many tools for citizen participation, including our many wonderful boards and commissions that are focused on either citizen-facing activities such as status of Black males, status of women, Hispanic and Latino, aging, youth and children, as well as many, many opportunities that we all have to engage in the kind of projects that we find most compelling and most necessary. We can also do that through the committee of the whole. So what our intent is to simplify, to clarify, and to get back to some basics that are going to make us less focused on process as a council and more focused on the policy issues that are so critically important to the smooth running and the good governance of this city. So I hope that explains a little as to why It's a matter of preference as to how we deliberate, how we organize ourselves to do business. It has no bearing on any policy prioritization.
Councilmember Sims, did you have something to add?
Thank you. I will just repeat. Well, first thing I want to, previously I was using the term ad hoc committees, and that is improper terminology. I even used that at our work session, council work session last week, in which I was Zoom bombed with some rather racially charged stuff. I hope that wasn't in response to me using the term ad hoc committees as opposed to special committees. But the point being is that dissolving standing committees as part of this legislation, I think is, as long as there are the ability to form special committees, then nothing is lost from the council standpoint with regard to dealing with public issues. And really, I have nothing else to add other than what my colleagues did. So it's just a different way of getting the work done. So thank you.
Councilmember Piedmont Smith, you had your hand up for a moment. Did you wish clarification of the responses to your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand what my colleagues have said. It still doesn't explain why even the possibility should be eliminated. But never mind, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, we'll proceed to further questions. I think Councilmember Volin was first, and then Councilmember Flaherty, and then Rosenberger. Councilmember Volin?
Yes, thank you. I have many questions. I first want to start with the comment that Councilmember Sims made. Since when is ad hoc improper terminology for special committees? I thought that's the definition and the appeal to the sponsors of it. Isn't a special committee basically an ad hoc formula?
Would you care for me to respond to that right now?
Well, I'm asking you a
sorry,
question. I'd like to finish the question. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So
sorry.
My understanding has always been that a special committee is by definition ad hoc. But maybe I'm incorrect. Maybe it's just that when 3 members create one, they're creating it ad hoc. What do you say to that?
Well, if I may jump in.
I asked Councilmember Sims. Thank you.
I know. And what I will say is I do not object to what you're saying. The Bloomington, the municipal code, there is no reference to ad hoc as far as I am aware, but there is references to special committees. And when talking with our staff, it is more preferable to use the term as written, which is special committee, ad hoc, which is what I was using.
But I mean, it's not incorrect to describe it as ad hoc.
No. Right? I'm just saying that language is not in there, and I'm just correcting it to use special committees. It's just that simple. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go on to another question if I could.
Well, let's, if you wouldn't mind, let's go one per, and then we'll come back.
Thank you.
I'll make sure I come back. And Councilmember Flaherty was next.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the sponsors for the presentation. I had a question about section 6 of the resolution, which says referral of legislation. In the absence of any active standing committees established to consider pending legislation, the council declares that the motion to introduce legislation made at a regular or special meeting of the council serves as a motion to refer it to the next regularly scheduled committee of the whole, unless the council has established a standing committee for that purpose or decides upon another matter or another manner of considering the legislation. So that's section 6 of this resolution. Chapter 2.04.80, parliamentary authority in Bloomington Municipal Code says, all meetings of the council and its committees shall be conducted in accordance with the procedures set forth in Robert's Rules of Order, except where a different procedure is required by state law, this chapter, or other ordinances of the city. The majority of the members of the council shall decide all matters of procedure not covered by the authority stated in this section. In short, Section 6 of the resolution appears to me to alter Robert's Rules of Orders. That is, it tries to create a referral to Committee of the Whole that is synonymous with a motion to introduce legislation. And I believe that our code requires that a change of that kind, a modification of Robert's Rules, to be completed via ordinance, not resolution. And I'm wondering what the thought of the sponsors is with regard to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would refer this to our legal staff who assisted us in drafting this resolution. It is my understanding that this is in accordance with our ability to govern our own process and how we do business. So again, I see Councilor Stephen Lucas has unmasked himself. If you wish to weigh in, sir.
Yes, thank you. Section 6 of the resolution mirrors language that was contained previously in an ordinance, and at the moment I don't have the number handy. I think it's an ordinance from several years ago. So the section that you mentioned, I think, was previously a rule that the council operated under. I'm sure that this was included here in this resolution just because it was relevant to the subject matter. If you give me a moment, I can look up that previous ordinance and let you know what that number was. But I think it was to reiterate that in the absence of these standing committees, the council does not necessarily have to consider a separate motion to refer legislation to the Committee of the Whole.
I think I have a follow-up question. Thank you, Mr. Lucas, for that explanation. My follow-up question would be that even in the absence of standing committees, there are, of course, other ways to handle legislation, including going directly to second reading, not Committee of the Whole, as particularly might be warranted with a fairly simple or rote kind of update to something we hear annually or some other simple matter. So it still gives me some pause that we are trying to combine multiple procedural steps to always proceed one certain way with a motion to introduce, when in fact there is context and nuance to the legislation we hear and how we might want to handle it. Do the sponsors have any thoughts about that concern?
I don't know.
Councilmember Scambaluri, I think, had her hand up. Sorry.
Sure. I think therein lies the flexibility of the language at the end of Section 6, or decides upon another manner of considering the legislation. We recognize that Committee of the Whole may be the most frequent direction of referral going forward, but it, as the language is written, actually does leave room for the council to determine some other process that may be appropriate. So I think that flexibility is there, but Mr. Lucas, did you want to?
Sorry, I was just going to follow up on Councilmember Flaherty's first question. Ordinance 1305 passed in 2013 included that same language, and I believe that rule would be in effect regardless of whether this language was included in the resolution. But again, I think it was included here just because of the relevance to the subject matter.
Okay, so this was Ordinance 1305 included that change to, sorry, I think I might have froze for a moment. Ordinance 1305, shoot, I'm sorry, my internet connection is telling me it's unstable. Ordinance 1305 changed this rule in line with the language of Section 6, but did not codify it, but it's been in effect for the last 9 years since it was accomplished via ordinance. Is that right?
I think that's correct, yes.
Okay.
And I don't know, my suspicion is that Ordinance 1305 included that language to reflect ongoing council practice. But no, it did not codify, it's my knowledge, and yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next up is Councilmember Rosenberger, then Bovolen, and then Piedmont Smith. Councilmember Rosenberger.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the co-sponsors of this for bringing it and having a discussion. My question for this is kind of a more in general question around collaboration here. I know that, I don't know who brought up the resolution condemning white supremacy, but I think the original sponsor of that, Councilmember Sims, had emailed all of us to ask if we wanted to be co-sponsors. And I think all 9 of us said, or the remaining 8 of us said yes to that. I know there's been a lot of talk tonight about the importance of committee of the whole for all 9 of us to consider legislation. And I know back in 2021, ordinance 2103, some folks voted no on that because they did not think there was enough collaboration. So I wanted to ask the sponsors of this if you reached out to all members of council beforehand and to get input on this. And then I wanted to ask if you also reached out to the administration and department heads to get their input as well. Thank you.
Who would like to take this? Council President Sandberg.
Yes, to the second part, we absolutely did reach out to our administration and our staff. And I do believe when we get to the point of public comment, we'll be able to get some of that feedback that we received as we were taking a look at this and bringing this forward. As to communicating with all members of the council, I believe in some form or fashion, we did make that attempt prior to making sure that, prior to bringing this to us tonight.
Councilmember Skimbley.
Thanks. And just to tack on to that as well, I think it's no great secret that standing committees and how they've impacted our processes have been the topic of conversation for 22 months now. And in fact, for some of us, for me in any event, that's one of the concerns is the sheer amount of time we spend on the care and feeding of committees rather than focusing on the ordinances that we're asked to look at. Of course, process is important and the integrity of the process is important. But I think the sheer amount of time we've spent over the last 22 months discussing and debating and altering and questioning tells us something about the opportunity to look back to committee of the whole as perhaps the better tool.
And I would simply say, if I may, when I was president and asked our council staff to begin working on this, and at the time, we just had the one person and a lot of other legislation that was working. But I can assure you, or at least it is my belief, that once the legislation was ready for presentation, then all council members were communicated. So there was no, as I understand it, and our council can correct me if I'm wrong, but once it was drafted and ready, then copies were sent to council members. So I'm not so sure the correlation between that and the resolution on white supremacy or anything else, unless I'm just missing something there, but thank you.
Council President, well, let's just exhaust the responses from the sponsors, and then I'll return to you, Councilmember Rosenberger. Yeah. Council President Sandberg, did you have something else to add?
Yes, and with respect to communicating it to the rest of council, we did have this as a topic of conversation at the last work session. Now, did we involve people in an advanced discussion of this before, as Councilmember Sims just said, it was ready to come forward for presentation? I suppose that could be said not, but again, it was presented in a work session.
Councilmember Skimbley, did you have something to add to the answer? All right, Councilmember Rosenberger, did you have something to follow up?
Yeah, well, I think
clarification.
Councilmember Sandberg, President Sandberg kind of summed it up, but I just wanted to weigh in on what Jim said. I think the correlation here is that Councilmember Sims, I mean, I greatly appreciated you asking who wanted to be a part of that. And I remember sitting down with you and working on edits to that resolution. And I just really, really appreciated that time that we spent pre-COVID in a library, in the IU library, I think. No, but my question was where we reached out to while this was in draft form, basically, and the answer is no. So I got the answer. Thank you.
Councilmember Volin, it's you like to ask another question?
Yes, I'd first like to say that I want to echo Councilmember Rosenbarger. I was not reached out to before the work session. I had no idea this was in the works. I'm interested in the analogy or the example given of matters of public safety. And it was listed all the different bodies that might have an impact on public safety besides the Public Safety Committee. I'll recite them again. The Board of Public Safety, which is a state required board that's made up entirely of appointees by the mayor. The CAPS Commission, which is not a committee of the council, it is a board and commission. One of the many, what was the phrase Councilmember Sandberg used? The many excellent boards and commissions that we have, wonderful boards and commissions that we have in the city. The working group, I forget what that was called, the police, future of police working group. Yeah, I don't know who created that group. The dispatch policy board is specifically related to all things dispatch and not more broadly public safety in general. And the Public Safety Local Income Tax Committee, which is the only other standing committee that is involved public safety beforehand. And even then, it was not the kind of committee to which we would refer general issues of public safety. Why not unify those two? If the concern is confusion, what we have under our control is the number of committees tasked to hear something. Why not unify the Public Safety Committee with the PS Lit Committee? Councilor Scambaluri.
Yes, I think you just went down the list just as we did when we were thinking about this legislation and outlined the differences between each ones, which ones are created by statute, which ones aren't, what the purview of this entity is as opposed to that entity. And I think those are all nuances and bits of information about those entities that we understand as council members, but I would guess the majority of the public does not understand those distinctions and finds it very confusing to have all of these different organizations. I'm not saying they aren't required. I'm not even remotely suggesting they don't do good work, but I'm suggesting that more seems to be creating confusion around issues.
Okay, well, I've also heard that very complaint from members of the public when it came to the comprehensive plan. There were no small number of objections to the comprehensive plan on the argument that there was a change that a member of the public didn't like, and they would say, how did anybody find out about this? How is, does anybody really know what's going on here? Why don't you pause this until we can better understand it? Should we really pause legislation until every member of the public who says they don't understand it fully understands it?
Is that the question?
That's the question.
Of course not, is the short response. No, it isn't realistic to pause all legislation until every member of the public understands it. That said, I think as council members, I think we do have an obligation to think very intentionally about how to put entities in place that make the most sense, that create the least amount of confusion, and that give the members of the public opportunities to connect with as many council members as they can around a particular issue that's important to them.
So then,
and I think in that regard, Committee of the Whole allows them to do that in real time.
So you don't think there's any confusion about the Committee of the Whole, and that the people who have come to speak to council—
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning of your question.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so you don't think there's any confusion about the Committee of the Whole itself, that people cannot tell it apart from a regular session, and that oftentimes, before COVID at least, we had people coming to our meetings who didn't know that they couldn't speak tonight because it was a Committee of the Whole, even though we were all there? You don't think that's confusing?
No, and actually, as I've said earlier, I thought I made this clear earlier. I think there already is confusion around regular sessions looking a lot like Committee of the Whole. All 9 of you are up there at the metaphorical dais. What is the difference? I think you're right. I think there is confusion around that. I think the goal then and government is complicated and nuanced. I think the goal then for us becomes to eliminate sources of confusion when we can. And I think that's part of the intention behind this. Committee of the whole, these are trade-offs that we make, as I see you shake your head. These are trade-offs that we make. The question I ask is, have standing committees lived up to the promise? Have they added value that makes the potential confusion worthwhile? And that's a very subjective thing, of course. But I think that's what underlies this conversation.
That's a conversation we're going to have later in this debate. But I will say that what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're trading one confusing set of process for another set that we knew was confusing before we ever changed it. So I think it's a wash at best.
We're bordering on quament at this point.
Well, you're an expert at that, Mr. Chair, so thank you.
Okay, we'll leave it at that, and we can follow up with further questions. I think Councilmember Piedmont-Smith has been waiting her turn for a long time. So Councilmember Piedmont-Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask one of the sponsors to reply to Councilmember Boland's original question before I ask my own question, because I don't think a response was ever provided. The question was, why not unify the Public Safety Committee with the PS Lit Committee and make it one committee?
Which sponsor would like to take that? Councilmember Sandberg. Oh,
actually, I'd like to hear the question again, just to make sure I heard it correctly, if I'm not mistaken.
Why not unify the Public Safety Committee with the PS Lit Committee and make it one committee?
I'm not so sure I could give you a satisfactory answer. And I'm not so sure that I personally have really even considered that. But I think the PS Lit, with the funding and the council members that are there, has been set before, and I think it's pretty clear. I think the Public Safety Committee, if I'm recalling what you said correctly, can still, as the council or the community sees a need, then that's where the special committees can come in. Again, I don't see any real need to combine those. And if we could, maybe, we could combine them with the Board of Public Safety, but there are some limitations, and other things. I know we can't because there's limitations, but I see no real value in doing as you suggest.
Council President Sandberg would like to respond next, and then Council Member Skimblary.
Thank you. I'm not sure that's within our purview. That is a kind of an outlier in that the PS Lit, we appoint 4 members to serve on this intergovernmental body that also includes the county council and the town of Ellisville and the town of Steinsville. So again, we have to look at what is within our purview, what has been created by us to accomplish certain goals, and what involves other jurisdictions. So I'm not even sure that I would consider even attempting to do that, given that it's not our committee alone. It belongs to all of Monroe County.
All right.
Councilmember Skimblary.
Yeah, and essentially the same thing. PS Lit is a committee of the Monroe County Tax Council. And we don't control all of the Monroe County Tax Council. So that's fundamentally, its source of authority is different from what almost any of the ways we've talked about committees on council. So that's why I would hesitate to just try combining those, if that's what you're suggesting. So
thank you. I appreciate the responses from the sponsors. I just felt like the question deserved an answer, like any questions from colleagues do. Mr. Chair, may I now ask my actual question?
Well, I'm taking...
Since I just repeated a question that was previously not answered.
Very good. Proceed.
Thank you. So this is going back to section 6 of the resolution. And, you know, I certainly listened earlier when Mr. Lucas informed us that ordinance 1305 included the same language. But it is, given this language, I do not understand how we can refer something to directly to second reading, since the motion to introduce legislation becomes tied up with the motion to refer it to committee of the whole. When in time can somebody say anything different? It just makes no sense to me. Can somebody explain this to me, please?
Mr. Lucas?
Yes, thank you. I think the approach you would take if you wanted to skip over committee of the whole would be to cancel that committee meeting and have that item proceed directly to second reading at the next regular session. So at the time the item is introduced, I think a motion could be brought in that regard. And I think this section allows for, as another member I think mentioned, other manners of considering the legislation. So I think what ordinance 1305 did was provide some amount of predictability that once an item is introduced, it would automatically go to committee of the whole unless the council decided otherwise. So I don't think that would take away your ability to skip over committee of the whole or not consider an item at a committee meeting before taking it up at second reading.
But Mr. Lucas, if there's more than one piece of legislation and one of them needs more deliberation, and we would like to see it at the committee of the whole, whereas another is very straightforward and simple, and we would like to refer it directly to second reading, how is that feasible?
Well, I guess the times where I think you might run into trouble are if there's a regular session immediately followed by a committee meeting like tonight. Most of the times the council introduces an item for first reading one week. The agenda for the following committee of the whole doesn't go out until the Friday after, so there would be time to account for that. Certainly where there are meetings scheduled back to back like tonight, we would need to account for that and mention the possibility that an item might not be taken up at committee of the whole if there's some indication that a member might move that. But we run into that problem now with standing committees if we're not exactly sure where an item will be referred. So what we try to do is communicate the possibilities to the public as best we can.
Well, I find this language unacceptable, but I'll save that for comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Volin?
I mean, I feel like I've gotten my second round question in, so I have follow-up questions, but I'll defer to other members.
Councilmember Flaherty.
I was interested in moving Amendment 1, but I'm happy to defer to the chair's preference on timing. Seeing we have been through a round of questions, seemingly,
yes,
it seemed appropriate.
We have, and they've been excellent questions, so I've allowed a bit more time. If everyone's ready, we can move to introduction of the amendments. Looks like we're ready. Councilmember Flaherty, you have Amendment 1, is that correct? Would you like
yes,
to?
I'd like to.
Motion?
Sure, I'd like to move we adopt Amendment 1 to Resolution 2202.
Second.
Very good. Could you describe Amendment 1?
Sure. The amendment is pretty simple. It strikes whereas clauses and language in the sections of the resolution that would abolish the administration, climate action and resilience, and land use committees. In short, the intent and purpose is to retain those committees as standing committees in their existing form. This amendment seeks a middle ground, I think, and a compromise among diverse views on the council by leaving a few standing committees in place for reasons that are specific to their focus area, which I'll explain. So one thing standing committees can do is handle legislation that is pending before a legislative body. This is how most cities our size in Indiana conduct business, and it's how Bloomington has conducted business in the more distant past. That's not the current preference of a 5-member majority of this council, and that, of course, is also totally fine. In expressing my interest for the council presidency last week, I spoke about a need for us to accept and embrace these diverse views and work on finding middle ground. Even if a majority of this body generally doesn't prefer to hear legislation in committees, there are, I think, certain use cases for standing committees that are still compelling. Some of those are contemplated by the resolution sponsors, including the use of interview committees, the Jack Hopkins Social Services Committee, and a sidewalk committee. These committees all have some kind of proactive work to do other than handling legislation under consideration. So too did the Administration Committee and the Climate Action and Resilience Committee, which this amendment seeks to retain. With the Administration Committee, I believe many or most council members share my view that we have work to do on process reform. Changes to Title II based on changes in practice over time or ambiguities, potential work with the mayoral administration on reform to boards and commissions based on the forthcoming Novak report that has studied them. Our budget process has been under much consideration with most members over the last few years, and there's many more examples. These will continue into the future. They are not discrete or standalone issues. And while the council would of course ultimately approve any changes as a full body, having a designated group whose job it is to work on these proactive items is helpful, as it is with the interview committees, Jack Hopkins and Sidewalk. Next, there's the Climate Action and Resilience Committee, which similarly has proactive work to do with the Sustainability Action Plan and Climate Action Plans of the city. The CAP in particular has many legislative items that will require proactive work to develop the legislation with collaboration between the council and the Economic and Sustainable Development staff. Indeed, ESD staff proposed, and we have already scheduled a series of quarterly meetings this year with the Climate Action and Resilience Committee to work on the legislative items in the Climate Action Plan. A standing committee is the perfect structure to work on these items because this work will take place over the next 7+ years and beyond as the CAP is updated in the future. We are in a climate crisis as the headlines and climate disasters around the country and world demonstrate on a weekly basis. And in my view, now is not the time to decrease our focus on climate change matters. Finally, with the Land Use Committee, I think there is a particularly strong case for its continued use to handle more complicated land use matters, especially planned unit developments or PUDs. Indeed, the Land Use Committee was created after some particularly troublesome and overly long committee of the whole meetings that went into the wee hours when dealing with complicated PUDs. We all know that committee of the whole cannot dismiss itself and reconvene. They are only able to rise and report back to the full body at the end of their time. So it is a less flexible mechanism to deal with items like PUDs that might take a longer time and need broader consideration. All land use legislation, regardless of whether the Land Use Committee remains intact, will of course still be subject to a committee referral, if any, that is in line with the preferences of the majority of this body at that time. In sum, I think there is a strong case to retain the 3 committees in this amendment. Again, I see this as a compromise, a middle ground that seeks to accommodate the diverse procedural preferences of the members of this body. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Councilmember Flaherty? Councilmember Scambaluri.
Thank you. This is one of, I have this concern, and how are you thinking about this kind of question? Okay, so I'm thinking in particular, for example, about what you said about the Administration Committee, that there is work to be done in the coming days. And that work comes under several different kinds of tasks. So there is some work to be done, for example, with boards and commissions. There is other work that may merit looking at process. There might be other work that could look at redistricting. And what I'm thinking is, well, should the same 4 people be charged with all of those? Would it not make more sense? And would it not be more nimble and flexible to have people gravitate toward whatever of those issues are most compelling to them in the form of special committees? Should the same 4 people be charged with all of those areas?
I think it's reasonable with the administration committee, for example, as a subject matter area for people to focus on. Yes, just like climate action, just like Jack Hopkins Social Services, just like sidewalk, or even the interview committees, for instance, where we have the same slate of boards and commissions that the same 3 people here year after year. So while there are diverse types of issues under the umbrella of administration, I think it's a reasonable sort of unit of analysis or level of aggregation for those issues. I feel like what was just suggested is actually a further division of that among committees, which strikes me as largely the opposite of what the sponsor's intent is with this resolution. Thank you.
Further questions for Councilmember Flaherty? Okay, seeing none. Then we will go to the public on Amendment 1 of Resolution 2202. And I would like to, without objection, give the public 3 minutes per speaker. And Ms. Lacey, you are emceeing the participants.
Yes. The first
Okay.
hand raised is Natalia Galvin, who should be able to unmute.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Ms. Galvin, proceed. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Natalia Galvin. I'm the president of the Monroe County chapter of the National Organization for Women, the chair of the 9th District Latino Caucus, Golden Bicycle organizer, and Bloomington resident. Golden Bicycle organized the climate action sit-in in December of 2019 in City Hall. I'm here today in support of Amendment 1 to save the climate action and land use committees. As Golden Bicycle and a standing group of Bloomington residents, old and young, stated at the 2019 sit-in, we are in a climate emergency. Bloomington has seen this firsthand, especially with the deadly floods just this past summer. IU's Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences described last summer's deadly floods as the 3rd most intense on record and the largest in over 100 years. And that regional trends over the last century show an increase in extreme rainfall like this event, which is consistent with fundamental atmospheric science theories and climate model simulations of ongoing and future climate change. As a volunteer in statewide and district political affairs, I have seen firsthand that our state policies and state ruling majority are doing us no favors in further protection. Because we are in a climate emergency, I am advocating that climate action and land use remain a standing committee. I do not think that climate change is a specialty issue. Climate resilience would indeed be diminished when it is removed from being recognized with a written importance as a standing committee, like with Jack Hopkins. This weekend, I did the math on all the 2021 Committee of the Whole and regular council meetings. The average is 3 hours and 1 minute. Minus the record-setting meeting, the average is still 2 hours and 52 minutes. Without climate action and land use being recognized as a standing committee, does that mean that each year it is at the discretion of the council president whether or not climate change will be a priority? That is an unacceptable step backwards for our city. Bloomington is one of the top 10 cities population-wise in Indiana. I either looked on the website or called the clerk of the 9 cities to ask what their policy was on standing committees. Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Evansville, South Bend, Carmel, Fishers, Hammond, Lafayette, and Noblesville all use standing committees on issues that are important to them. Finally, I leave the council with this. I learned a lot from council meetings. I learned about microtransit. I started using Earth Keepers and joined the city's leaf composting pilot because of Councilman Rallo's strong advocacy for composting during the 2021 budget week. We need to dive further into issues like this that intersect with climate action and look at the real social, economic, and racial justice issues that stem from climate change. We cannot take any backward steps on climate action, and this amendment supports that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Galvin.
Next, we have Joseph Wania, who should be able to unmute.
Yes, I am able to unmute. This is Joseph Winia. I am a member of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment and also for all of the remarks that all of the council members have made during this meeting. I absolutely see the interest of both sides in that there are different administrative components and advantages and disadvantages to each. I am not a council member, so I don't know exactly what the impact is like in the daily work that's required for all of the exchanges that take place. But I guess as a member of the public, I can express that I do have a lot of support, or total support, for Amendment 1, actually, in opposition to the abolition of the Climate Action and Resilience Standing Committee in particular. Just as Ms. Galvin was describing, I believe that the scope and severity of the issue of climate change warrant having ongoing designated attention in addition to what the council as a whole can provide. And I believe that there would be increased flexibility in a smaller number of members and the designation of specific individuals that would improve the continuity of engagement on the diverse and broad-reaching initiatives that are required by climate change mitigation and adaptation. So as a final observation, I just want to note that during the 2022 budget adoption discussions, the council vied admirably for additional representation in city staff for a designated climate position. And now the abolition of a standing council or a standing committee of the council seems to be inconsistent with that objective of giving additional attention to climate action. So I once again appreciate the opportunity to provide public comment and your consideration for the merits of not abolishing these additional committees and adopting Amendment 1. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Renia.
Next, we have Deborah Meyerson, who should be able to unmute.
Ms. Meyerson, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. My name is Deborah Meyerson, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you this evening. I would like to express my strong support for Amendment 1 to this resolution that would retain the Climate Action and Resilience and Land Use Standing Committees. Council standing committees offer an important channel for consistency, effectiveness, and equity to serve constituents. Climate action and resilience are urgent issues that demand priority attention. Land use and transportation issues, frankly, are typically complex matters that extend beyond a single specific project. Retaining standing committees on these focal points ensure that they benefit from council members' sustained attention over different election cycles. However, I would like to note that it remains problematic that Resolution 22-02 would abolish the Transportation Committee and resurrect the Sidewalk Committee. Exactly 1 year ago, the Council Sidewalk Committee members voted to merge with the Transportation Committee after committee members reviewed Mark Stossberg's independent, locally produced sidewalk equity study, where he documented a trolling pattern over the past 20 years that revealed that sidewalk projects funded by the Sidewalk Committee predominantly benefited wealthier, lower density neighborhoods with less pedestrian demand. Fortunately, council members and their constituents can benefit from a more inclusive both and situation rather than an either or for local governance. Resolution 22-02 renews the capacity of the committee as a whole, retaining the standing committees on climate action and resilience and land use. And frankly, again, I think transportation should be in there too, can help deliver both and. If not retaining the Transportation Standing Committee, council should delegate the oversight of the allocation of the sidewalk funds to planning and transportation staff. Last year, planning and transportation staff and several council members expressed support that the sidewalk fund should be allocated by staff instead of the council sidewalk committee process. Resolving the problematic equity issue that has been documented in the past of the sidewalk committee is one of the options that is an important measure to support council members' capacity to serve constituency with consistency, effectiveness, and equity. Thank you for your consideration and support for Amendment 1.
Thank you for your comments.
Next, we have Corey Ray, who should be able to unmute.
Yeah, hi. My name is Corey Ray, and I'm here today on behalf of Sierra Club Hoosier Chapter. I'm also a member of the Bloomington Environmental Commission, though I'm not here on their behalf, and a longtime resident of Bloomington, and would just like to thank you all for having me here tonight and giving me this opportunity to speak. We represent, as an organization, 2,469 individuals who are either dues paying members or signed up supporters of Sierra Club here locally. And today, whenever I brought up what was happening at council to my direct leadership in a greater forum, they were appalled. They said that's not something typical of what Bloomington would be doing or should be doing, or the example that's been set in the past. And that's why I'm here tonight to support Amendment 1 and Councilor Flaherty's efforts to keep the Standing Commission on Environment, or Climate, and on land use. As we stand right now, we are in a pinnacle of not turning back on climate change. Things will be different. We will have weather in the extremes. We will have people moving from various parts of the country and the world to adapt to these changes. And we will have places looking for leaders in both governments on the local, state, and federal levels. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my long career in advocacy and politics, it's that all politics are local, and that what happens at the local level does set the tone for everything else. So I think there is value in symbolism. There is value in specifically addressing and keeping issues on the forefront. And that's why I am here today on behalf of our members to say that we would urge the council and members of the council to support Amendment 1, and that tomorrow, whenever I give my report on how this goes, I really hope I can give a favorable report to these members that we did do justice to the climate and that Bloomington did once again show leadership in doing what is right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Josie Pipkin, who should be able to unmute.
Hello, my name is Josie Pipkin, and I serve as the Advocacy Director for Indiana University Student Government, and I'm here to support of the Amendment 1 to this resolution. Currently, we are asking from the Bloomington City Council for the bare minimum at this point. We all know that climate change and the climate crisis is of an urgency right now. The Climate Action put out a climate plan stating that by 2050, Bloomington will likely see an increase of temperature to 5 degrees. We will also see 49 extra days of weather above 95 degrees. We will see an increase of air conditioning demands by 28%, an 8% increase in rainfall. And this was urgent then, and it's as urgent today. I do not see the point of abolishing these committees. I think that it does not speak in favor of where Bloomington should be going in terms of this climate issue. As many people have already stated, there is significance in having these as standing committees, as well as being leaders in the community on a local level.
Thank you for your comment.
Next, we have a person with a screen name, Nigella Rootsong, who should be able to unmute.
Thank you. My name is Nigella Rootsong, and I am a local Bloomington citizen and a member of the Bloomington Commission on Sustainability. I am not here officially representing that commission. However, there are several other members in support of preserving this committee. I'm here to speak on behalf of Amendment 1 to preserve the Climate Action and Resilience Committee of the Council. There were several other members in support of preserving this committee, 2 of which are in attendance tonight, 1 of which has already spoken. A third, Colin Murphy, wanted me to mention his name in particular in support of my comments. The current climate crisis has created the urgent need to address the many areas of risk and vulnerability posed to the citizens of Bloomington, such as increased flooding, hotter and drier summers, and other dangerous and unpredictable weather events such as storms, tornadoes, etc. It is the obligation of this body, the Common Council, to act to address these urgent changing climate conditions in order to ensure that the increased hazards of both loss of life and loss of economic value do not fall solely on our poorest and most vulnerable citizens to suffer from them. I feel that the creation of a traffic calming committee at the same time as abolishing the Climate Action and Resilience Committee would demonstrate a distressing misplacement of priorities shown for the long-term sustainability, social equity, and quality of life in our city. I am in support of Councilmember Flaherty's amendment to the resolution that would preserve the Climate Action Resilience Committee. I also wanted to mention that I'm a member of the Community Action on Public Safety Commission, and I don't find it confusing to have the Standing Committee on Public Safety or on climate action. In fact, I find it helps to know which council members are the most suitable ones for members of the public to contact for issues relating to those subjects to keep the standing committees on those issues. Thank you for your careful consideration.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mark Stossberg, who should be able to unmute.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Stossberg.
Appears that he's unmuted, but I don't hear him.
Mr. Stossberg, could you attempt to unmute again? I'm not getting anything.
Perhaps we could come back to him.
Do we have another?
I believe that we do. I believe that Mary Catherine.
Mr. Stossberg, we'll come back to you if you can try to reestablish a connection. Yes, Ms. Lacey.
I believe that Mary Catherine Carmichael is next.
Good evening, Council. Are you recognizing me?
Yes, Mary Catherine Carmichael, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this evening. Mary Catherine Carmichael, Public Engagement Director, Office of the Mayor. When we learned that this would be a topic of discussion for council members, I did a rather informal survey of department heads and asked them what their experience had been with these committees over the last couple of years, because we've had a little time now to really lean into these and see how they would impact staff. I can speak specifically to some. I'm a little unsure exactly which is the right time for me to speak to this, but I'll give brief comments now, and then when there's a vote, maybe on the overall, I'm happy to maybe go into more detail as you wish. But specifically, the land use and transportation. Oh, I'm sorry, I want to say. So I surveyed the department heads, and not all of them responded, because I think that not every department head actually has interaction with these committees. But I did hear back from the majority, and so I would just characterize overall. There were definitely some supportive responses, but I would say that the non-supportive responses certainly outweighed and outnumbered the positive responses. I know that we're talking about land use right now, so I did pull out one, and I'm going to anonymize all these responses just out of kindness to the department heads. But this particular comment from a department head said there seems to be some agenda items that may fit in one or more standing committees. It needs to be fixed as far as land use or transportation. And this idea of there being some confusion about what belongs where did come up in both conversation that I had with them, and then in some responses that I received when I reached out. So I'll hold there if that's all right, and perhaps comment again when the general vote is before you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lacey, let's go back to Mr. Stossberg if he is. See if we can.
Hello?
Yes, Mr. Stossberg?
Hello, yes, I'm Mark Stossberg.
We're getting you, so you have 3 minutes.
Great. I'm the author of the sidewalk equity audit that was mentioned earlier, and my comments tonight relate to the sidewalk committee. Just as a reminder, it existed to spend money from the Alternative Transportation Fund, which was created by ordinance in 1992.
Mr. Chair, and I apologize, Mr. Stossberg. If I'm not mistaken, this comment goes to what would be Amendment 2 of, and not Amendment 1, which does not include the Transportation Committee or Sidewalk Committee.
Okay.
And sorry, Mr. Stossberg, to cut you off. If I'm mistaken, please forgive me.
No, thank you. Yeah, wrong time. Thank you.
Okay, we'll hear from you later on Amendment 2, I believe. Do we have another participant? Ms.
We
Lacy?
do. It's Jacob Schwartz, who should be able to unmute.
Mr. Schwartz?
Hi, yeah, I'm just going to keep this short and sweet. I fully support Amendment 1, mainly due to the fact that it maintains, a commission regarding the environment. And I believe that climate change is going to be one of the most pressing issues moving forward over the next couple decades. And I think we need to do everything we can in order to not only prevent or slow climate change, but also to mitigate the effects once it gets here. So with that being said, thank you for the opportunity to comment, and yeah, go Amendment 1.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else remaining, Ms. Lacy?
I do not see any other raised hands, and I do not have any messages in the chat.
Okay, in that case, we'll come back to council. Let's have some further questions if needed. If anyone has any other questions for Councilmember Flaherty or the sponsors of the resolution in reflection of Amendment 1. Councilmember Volin, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. The staff, the administration, planning department has said that they do not prefer a sidewalk committee. The sponsors of the legislation say they're partly doing this to reduce pressure on staff. What do the sponsors say to the this is related to the amendment. I mean, why would the sponsors object to what staff wants with respect to sidewalk versus transportation?
Well, does this concern Amendment 1?
It's talking about resuming the transportation committee, which the legislation is proposing to replace with the old sidewalk committee. So I think it's relevant.
I think this is relevant for Amendment 2.
Well, I thought this was
Mr. Rowland. No,
I'm sorry, they were one. My bad. Okay, I'll come back with a different question. My bad.
Okay, any other questions from council before we go to discussion debate? Okay, Councilmember Volin.
Yes, thanks. Sorry for the confusion. If, as the sponsors think that there is no need for a standing committee on climate, from where do they think action will come? Are they thinking that we need to wait for the administration to bring us legislation?
Okay, sponsors, Council President Sandberg.
No, this is not a passive attempt to just wait for someone else to propose legislation. I think we've already outlined all the many mechanisms for which individual council members of the group, through special committees, through the work they're already doing as the appointees to many of these boards and commissions. There are many, many ways legislation can be initiated. And I think people are somehow missing the point that, again, this is not about policy as much as it is about process and procedure. And the wonderful momentum that has been made through the Transportation Committee and through the Climate Action Committee, there is no reason for that to discontinue, that momentum to continue. We embrace everything that's been said by the public coming in here tonight. And we want to make it very, very clear that when we move from a standing committee system to a committee of the whole system, that in no way slows down the progress that has been made. And it is our intention for it to continue on full speed ahead. We absolutely agree with the urgency of climate action. We absolutely agree with the need for equity and inclusion in our decisions. We feel great progress has been made and we hope it continues. We're just advocating for a different system of how we deliberate and make decisions.
You're saying you believe in equity and inclusion. Are you saying somehow that committees exclude members? Is that, I mean, do you think that the primary reason of a standing committee is to exclude 5 members from an issue?
No, we are not saying that. We are saying that we feel the better vehicle, the better tool is for all 9 of us to be present at the same time when anything's brought forward, whether it's generated by council, whether it's generated by the administration, whether it's a recommendation that's coming from a board or a commission, that we all nine, that is what we consider much more inclusionary.
Okay, well, the price of including all nine in every decision is that it takes time that we can't, I mean, every district representative here will tell you that they have specialties. There are things that I worry about in my district that Councilmember Smith doesn't worry about in his. So every time I have to hear an issue about a JAG grant or the new, the animal control agreement, which is pretty standard fare, which is never controversial, it takes time away that I could be spending focusing on issues that are important to my constituency.
This is a comment. Do you have a question?
The question is, do the sponsors not have any empathy with this concern?
Councilmember Sims, would you like to reply?
No, I just simply, I think I'm a little confused. Is this, are we discussing Amendment 1? Are we back to the original resolution with these questions? He says the sponsor right now is Councilmember Flaherty.
Well,
is that a point of order? No, I'm just trying to be clear.
Yeah, it's a very general question, and I left it open for the sponsors to answer any questions the council had in reflection of the current amendment that's being offered, because we're trying to just decide really the
Mr. Chair, if I could, perhaps I could send the question to Councilmember Flaherty, who sponsors the amendment. What would he say?
Well, he has a question himself, but yeah, if you would, that would be fine. Councilmember Flaherty, do you want to respond to Councilmember Volin?
Specifically with respect to the climate committee.
Sorry, can you restate it?
Yeah, I mean, if everything is dealt with in the committee of the whole, when am I going to have time to focus on the climate? I would, if I would rather other members focus on the climate, they would be doing so on my behalf, and I'd be grateful to them. What do you say to that as the sponsor of this amendment?
I think you're highlighting an important issue, Councilmember Volin, which is that while there are benefits to 9 members working on something, there are also disadvantages related to time. In particular, we don't have 9 members decide all of Jack Hopkins Social Services committee decisions. We don't have all 9 members attend all sidewalk committee meetings. We don't have all 9 members interview every board and commission appointment because that would be impractical. So there's a balance to strike somewhere there. And my view with this amendment is that the proactive work required in administration and climate and the complicated legislative matters on land use, particularly planned unit developments, strike that balance and justify their separation as committees, just like Jack Hopkins, just like sidewalk, just like interview committees.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Flaherty, did you have a question as well, or and then Councilmember Rosenberger is next. So
I did have a question. Thank you for the resolution sponsors vis-a-vis Amendment 1. In particular, I'm wondering, I mentioned in my presentation of the amendment that we had met with Lauren Clemens, the Assistant Director for Sustainability, in December, setting up a quarterly work schedule to work on some of this proactive climate legislation that I talked about. Again, there's dozens of legislative actions called out in the Climate Action Plan to be developed and implemented over the next 7.5 years. And it was the Economic and Sustainability Developments, Sustainable Developments Department's recommendation and suggestion last fall that would create such a quarterly committee meeting structure to work on these things, because they are not legislation that's been developed. It's something prospective. So my question is, do the resolution sponsors propose that all 9 members should meet with Lauren Clemens quarterly to work on legislation in the Climate Action Plan?
Council President Sandberg.
Thank you. And the answer to that is no. It is my intent as we resolve this matter tonight to begin speaking to all the members currently on the climate action about moving forward with just exactly that, but not through a standing committee mechanism, but through a special committee mechanism. That is my intent. Again, when I say this is not meant to squash, stifle, stop progress, this is just a simple matter of one process that we prefer over another. But absolutely, we would want that good work that you have begun to continue. But those are discussions that I would like to have with you following the resolution of this matter this evening.
Councilmember Flaherty, did that satisfy?
Yeah, it did answer my question, but I just had two related follow-ups that I think are fairly minor, if permitted.
Okay, why don't we go ahead if they're related?
They're directly following on that question. The next of which is, I mentioned the 7+ year timeline that this work will take and be organized over, and actually probably longer than that, because the climate action plan will be updated and renewed, and there will remain legislative items. We know this work will exist for probably decades in a way that needs structure. Why would we not have a standing committee that will exist ongoing and have clarity? Why would a special committee be the mechanism that is as described by multiple members on both sides of this issue, is more ad hoc and not necessarily as long lasting? Every new president might convene something different. I don't know. I'm having trouble understanding why a special committee is the desired mechanism.
Council President Sandberg.
Our position is a special committee does not need to be any more temporary than some people I think are thinking. There are some provisions for sunsetting a special committee, but a special committee can last as long as it needs to in order to do its business and to do its research and to make the progress that it wants to make. There is no timeline on how long a special committee can exist. And so this is where we're getting into the difference. A standing committee is no more important than or has no more permanency than a special committee does. And these are things that I very much want to sit down and speak with everyone currently serving on climate action to come to some understanding about what is the intent going forward and how do we keep the momentum going. It is absolutely an urgent need in this community. That is not being dismissed by the sponsors of this resolution.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rosenberger.
Thank you. I have a question. It's a 7-parter. I'm just kidding. I don't think there are that many. First, thank you, Councilmember Flaherty, for bringing this amendment, and thank you for the public comment. I have some questions pretty much based on public comment, I would say, and it is a multi-parter, though. So the first part, I think you all were trying to get to this a second ago, but what is so special about special committees, and why does it appear that some folks are so adamant at the destruction of standing committees when we have some that really are working so well? And it just feels like there is this, like, I don't know, like, no way, Jose, like, we're not compromising. This is an absolute. And I just want to ask, like, does it have to be an absolute here? I think there are good reasons to keep a couple committees. I mean, it is true, our climate crisis is not going away during our lifetimes here. Like, why reinvent the wheel with every new president? Why change up if everyone was serving on one committee, on the standing committee? Why change it up? Like, what is the hatred with the phrase standing committee that leaves no room for compromise here? A part of that is, do you think there's any compromise owed when some of us were not aware of this before it even came before council? Ms. Galvin spoke to 10 of the 10 most populated cities in Indiana using standing committees. We are one of them. We are number 7 in that list. And there's been so much talk here about confusion to residents. So I wanted to ask, I know.
Well, Councilmember Rosenberger, could I just, I think you're muted.
Cities in this state, and like, why are they getting it and our residents are not?
Councilman Rosenberger, I think there are multiple questions there. So
can you hear
let's, yeah, I can hear, you dropped off for a
My
moment.
AirPod died.
Okay, let's take
can
the
you
first
get this
question and return
Okay.
to the next.
Thanks. Okay.
Would that be good?
Great.
So would the sponsors like to answer the first question posed by Councilmember Rosenberger, Councilmember Scambaluri?
Yeah, I could try this. And if I'm understanding you correctly, Councilmember Rosenberger, you're saying what is so distasteful, my word, not yours, about a standing committee to address an issue. Is that correct? Am I?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any room for compromise here?
And what is so? And a cousin question to that is, what's so special about special committees? I think it is precisely because climate change is an issue that is so critical and that will persist for years to come that it deserves the attention of all 9 members. I am, forgive that, I don't know if this analogy will make sense, but I am a fundraiser by trade. And one of the things, whenever I get asked to join a board or something like that, people say, oh, you can form a fundraising committee. And I always decline to do that because then fundraising becomes the responsibility of that little group of 4 and everyone else is absolved of it. I think climate change is exactly the kind of issue that deserves attention from all 9 of us. Now, attacking issues around climate change, attacking climate change is a multidimensional issue. There are a lot of different sets of expertise that need to come to bear. There are lots of different ways to approach response, crafting a climate response and responding to climate change. And in that case, special committees, I think, are the more flexible tool that can form and bring together those who have relevant skill sets or relevant specialized knowledge related to something. And then if another element or another prong of a response to climate change comes, then another special committee could look at that if need be. It need not be the same for people over time. And I think of that as an advantage. And the overarching issue again is that when something is as important as climate change, I think it deserves the attention of all 9 council members. I don't think any council member, no one that I've ever served with on this council would suggest otherwise. So I would offer that thought, and I would invite Councilmember Sandberg or Sims to further flesh out that idea if you like. So,
Councilmember Sims.
Thank you. Well, I'll try. First thing, and I want to thank Councilmember Scambaluri for using the word distasteful, and you said it's your word and no one else's, because what I heard at first was the word hatred, and that is nothing farther from the truth to use that type of terminology for those that may support this. There is no hatred, at least I can just speak for myself. It is just a different way of looking to operate. It is no more hatred now than when we switched to standing committees about 2 years ago. So just my point there. But I will say, I think President Sandberg has already alluded to her intent from a special committee standpoint to continue the work that has been started with the Climate Action and Resilience Committee, if that is their choice. I just don't know how we got to the point that if we don't have that particular standing committee, that we no longer care about climate change, and that nothing could be further, or climate action, I should say, and nothing else could be further from the truth from this council. It's just a different way of operating, and that's the way I look at it. So I hope that came close to answering your question. And I will repeat again, me as one of the sponsors, there is no hatred involved with this legislation. Thank you.
Councilman Rosenberger, did you have more to ask regarding this?
Well, yes, I did. I will follow up with that. Thank you to both of you and Councilmember Scambaluri. I mean, I think your answer kind of is mirroring the answer with the administrative standing committee, that instead of having 4 people do that, we will create multiple special committees for different ideas or issues. So instead of having one standing committee, we will have multiple separate committees, and potentially sometimes that's going to be all 9 people, and sometimes it's not. And I guess that seems, again, much more confusing to me than having one committee as like point people to like tackle this legislation or ideas. Okay, so that is difficult. The second question was about confusion of residents, that if 10 of the top most populated cities in the state have standing committees and those residents seem to be functioning fine with them, why do you think Bloomington residents are confused? Do you think we have more confused residents than other cities, or do you think we're doing something, you know, not the best, I guess? I just don't know why we are unique in that way.
I'm happy to respond to that. Did you direct that to me, or did you want to send that to some of the other sponsors? I'm happy to respond.
Any of the sponsors.
I'll start and then invite my fellow sponsors to chime in. No, I don't think that our residents are somehow more prone to confusion than any other city. What an interesting thought. Certainly, we can very much look at other cities and say, well, they have a committee X, why don't we? They have committee Y, how come we don't? I think it's also equally possible that some cities look at us and say, look, that's interesting how they use committee of the whole. Is that a tool that we want to think about more intentionally using? So the whole notion that everybody's doing it is not particularly compelling to me. So I would offer that thought. I'll leave it there for now, and I'll invite my colleagues to chime in, but I have some other thoughts as well. So,
would the other 2 sponsors have anything to say? Or should we proceed to other questions?
If we can move on, I think that would be wise.
Okay, I actually have a question. I'll put it to the sponsors. Councilmember Flaherty, I think, is left for the moment, but so what I'm understanding then is the preferred mechanism here is to send climate-related, and a lot of things are climate-related, frankly, to the committee of the whole, to have the entire council consider it in terms of climate, as opposed to 3 or 4 members of the council, but retain the proactive nature of the climate standing committee, climate action standing committee, by creating a special committee that's focused on evolving, policies and legislation and so forth in that committee, but not hearing or deciding on legislation per se, which would go to the full council. Is that correct, Councilmember Scambaluri? You said it, I think.
I think that's possible.
Elegantly than I did, but yeah.
And I do want to acknowledge Councilmember Rosenbarger's question about, isn't it infinitely more confusing if you have all these special committees? If you have them all at once, I think that could be confusing. I don't know that, I'm not suggesting we create them all at once. Of course not. I'm suggesting we keep that as a tool that we can use when it serves us and serves the public well. I'm not suggesting that we suddenly form all these special committees. So I'll leave that there and I'll come back if need be. So,
Council President Sandberg.
Yes, and the mechanism is there for any 3 or so council members to generate their own special committee as they see fit, as they have these important issues that they want to emphasize. Also, the council president can appoint special committees. That's also in our code as a mechanism. But my preference as the president is not to determine where these special committees are going to be formed before I consult with all of you about what your interests are in continuing the work that's already been established as a special committee. That is my intention. That is something that I hope to do, and very, very soon, to get to gauge that interest in these very, very urgent matters that all 9 of us embrace.
Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, to the resolution sponsors and perhaps particularly President Sandberg. Why didn't you ask me as the chair of the Climate Action and Resilience Standing Committee before this legislation what I thought about using special committees, what the relative advantages or disadvantages were? In particular, since code says that special committees shall cease to function when they've completed their duties and made a report or recommendation to the council.
Yes, and that language is shall cease to function, but it does not mean it has to stop functioning. And I will just bring forward the example of the Affordable Living Committee. That was 3 years in the making. Putting together a committee and doing research and dividing into subgroups. And then when we finally had a report to issue, then we sunset after two long years of process and one kind of year in between when it went into hiatus. But it is up to any special committee to decide when their work is done and when they wish to sunset. In the case of climate action, absolutely, the case has been made many, many times through our public comment. And what we all know, climate action is not a temporary thing. It is going to be with us for generations to come. And so it is not my intent to indicate that any special committee has a deadline in which they complete their work. That can be up to them. That can be up to the special committee to decide. With respect to not communicating with you in advance, when I was making I know you, when in advance, probably you would mean like months in advance, as this resolution was being drafted with carefully amongst the sponsors and our legal staff that were helping us to do this. But again, many things you don't bring forward until you're ready to bring it forward. And so I will only make my commitment to you as chair of the Climate Action Committee. I absolutely will want to work with you in maintaining and adding on to the work that has been done and does need to continue in the future. So that is coming. My apologies if I did not give you an advance on that, but we were working on the legislation amongst ourselves and with our staff and felt it was not appropriate to bring it forward until we were ready to bring it forward.
Thank you for your answer.
Councilmember Volin, I think, was first, and then Councilmember Piedmont Smith. If you still have
questions.
questions.
I have to. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to ask Councilmember Sandberg about what you just said. I mean, did I miss the plain meaning of the word shall? If the special committee shall end itself after reporting, how are you saying that that means that they don't have to end? Once they make a report, the code says shall means that they have to cease function. So, I mean, maybe I should put it in respect to the Affordable Housing Committee. Once you issued your report, did you feel that the special committee had done as much as it could do? That there was no further work to be done?
Oh, of course not. The work is never done with respect to affordability, with respect to housing and transportation and food, but the culmination of the report was what we determined would be our contribution to that effort. But the shall sunset or shall finish at the end of a report, you can decide how long you need before you issue any kind of resolution to your work. And that means you can keep it going as long as you wish. The report is not necessarily a culmination of anyone's attempt. There is always work to do on every policy issue that we have. But when special committees form, they do their utmost to advance the issues to the best of their ability in coordination with other entities that are also doing that work.
Okay, well, if there is always important work to be done, why would we go through the trouble of convening and reconvening a series of special committees when we can simply have one that stands? I mean, this year's special committee stood for 3 years. It was generally speaking, a task force, a special committee operates in the course of a year or less, a few months. If it's truly a temporary thing, why not have a standing committee on affordable housing? This is to Councilmember Sandberg.
Well, thank you for the question. I'm not sure I can answer that because this is the determination of individual council members in concert with each other. It is not mine to say who forms what and under what name it is formed. I just don't see the need for us to differentiate the importance of any work that's done, whether it's called a standing committee or whether it's called a special committee. The work is the work, and it will be up to the individual members who participate to determine the outcomes and what their goals are and how they wish to accomplish them. I can't answer that question.
Okay, thank you. I think I have my answer.
Councilmember Sims, did you have something to add?
Well, I just want to add on that. We seem to focus on the word shall for a minute, as if a report would end everything. But that's a two-parter there, if you ask me. The committee shall cease to function when it has completed its duties. And then there's an and. So I can expect a report from certain special committees when their duties have not been, quote unquote, completed. I mean, I hope that's a clarification there. That's the way I see it.
Okay.
So I don't just focus on the shall cease at that point. What's more important to me is when it has completed its duties. And I think that's the important delineating portion there.
To follow up on what Councilmember Sandberg said with respect to what you just said, a committee can decide that its duties are indefinite. And so the only difference is that from that and a standing committee is that it was self-appointed, and it doesn't have to. I mean, it won't get legislation referred to it. So that's the only difference. I mean, is that a good clarification?
Say the other difference is that special committees are a part of code, whereas standing committees was part of council legislation. That to me is the distinction. So, I mean, we can.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. The council decided when we decided to go to standing committees, it's all allowed for in code, but I don't want to slice and dice code for this. I mean, we're just changing the way we operate, the way we did before standing committees. It's really, in my mind, pretty simple. And we're not going to lose anything, as I see it, based on what I heard from our president earlier with regard to the climate action resilience area and the opportunity to create special committees as individuals or the president see fit. Moving on. So,
Mr. Sims, are you saying that standing committees are somehow a recent invention of the council, that they have not always been pulled along with special committees?
I'm just saying we operated one way before standing committees were introduced, and now we're moving in another way. There's no difference between now and then in my mind. It's just the way we operate. Thank you.
So, Councilmember Skimbaluri, did you have anything to add?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, let's go. I think Councilmember Piedmont Smith, did you have your hand up? Would you like to ask a question?
I did, but at this point, I just want to apologize for my cat, and I do not have a question. Thank you.
Okay, perhaps I'll make another attempt at this, because I want to make sure that we had a lot of public comment that essentially reflected this underlying theme that we're turning our back on climate action. And what I'm understanding from this discussion is that we continue with a committee. It just that the legislation will not be referred to that committee. It can evolve legislation, it can revolve policy, it can discuss matters related to adhering to the Sustainability Action Plan, et cetera, but that the legislation that might have been sent to the Climate Action and Resilience Committee is going to be sent to the Committee of the Whole. And so it will involve the deliberations of all 9 of us. Am I understanding this correctly, Councilmember Sandberg? And I'd like to have Councilmember Flaherty reflect on it too, but Council President Sandberg, am I?
Yes, I believe that is accurate.
Summarizing it. So, Councilmember Flaherty, what I just stated is sort of a simplification of the process. Your major objection, I think, is not that the legislation, are you objecting to the fact that the legislation won't be heard by 4 people in committee, but will be heard by 9? That doesn't seem to be it. It seems mostly focused on the longevity of the committee, and that standing committees are apart in terms of they will exist in perpetuity. Is that what you were drilling down to?
I think special committees, as most people would understand the meaning of the language in code, are discrete, issue-based, and time limited, that they are tasked with tackling a single item or a single area to report back and then be done. That's how I think most people would read what code says and understand that to mean. This feels to me a bit like scrambling after the fact. I don't think this was really anticipated or contemplated in advance, frankly. I know I wasn't consulted about it, nor were any of the 4 members who tend to favor the continuation of the Climate Action Resilience Standing Committee. And I think the counter to be would be that why don't we abolish Sidewalk Committee, the interview committees that you're contemplating forming, and Jack Hopkins Social Services Committee, and create a special committee for Jack Hopkins Social Services Committee and a special committee for sidewalks. The distinction to me seems a little absurd. Those committees don't handle legislation either. Why are they standing committees? I think, again, the plain language of the special committees in code, and most people would understand that to mean short-lived, temporary, whereas we know we have years and years of literally planned work and a year's worth of planned meetings for an existing standing committee. I truly am at a loss for sort of what's happening right now.
Well, what I'm reading is that the intent, if I could be so bold to say, of the sponsors is to send legislation related to things like land use, climate action, and other matters to all 9 of us. And that is the primary intent of this legislation. So I'm fairly clear on that. I don't, agree with the framing of that this means turning our back on climate. I think that is a total exaggeration that doesn't really even make any sense, because we're all going to, as Councilmember Scamilleri said, we're all going to be hearing it, not just 4 members, but all 9. So isn't that in some ways an advantage, wouldn't you say? That all 9 of us hear it as opposed to 4 in committee?
All 9 of us always hear everything, Councilmember Barala.
Well, yes, eventually. I'm saying in committee.
I think committees have their uses, and I've clarified what I think those are in my presentation of this amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Piedmont Smith, you have a question?
Yes. If the Climate Action and Resilience Committee, Standing Committee, remains in place, any legislation in this area could still be referred to Committee of the Whole. Is that not right? I guess this is for Councilmember Flaherty.
Yes, of course, that it could be referred to Committee of the Whole, and would always follow what the majority intends.
Thank you.
Okay, are there further questions? Okay, then we'll go to comment by council. If anyone has a comment to make. Councilmember Volin. This is on Amendment 1, of course.
Right. I have a lot to say. I'm going to try to boil it down as much as I can, but every second-class city and the one first-class city in the state has committees that stand because they have issues that are ongoing, except us, before 2020. Everyone. Other cities do not look at us and think we should be more like Bloomington. If anything, the article in the HT last year talking about how our meetings are longer on average than those in Indianapolis and Louisville should tell us something, that we are a growing city that has so many ongoing concerns that we need to start splitting up the work. that we need to start specializing. This was the idea 2 years ago. It hasn't changed. Committees can also do research, and sure, a special committee could do it. But again, if it's going to last for more than a few months, why not keep going? Why not just let it stand? If the question is, well, that because it only allows certain members to focus on an issue, well, then we should have a policy as a council of requiring rotation among seats, not make it optional, but that every member in those areas where we do feel for some reason we should have a committee, that no 3, 4, however many people should serve in the same position every year, because that way eventually everybody gets a turn. We should be finding a way to divide up the 4-year term so that at some point every member serves in every seat. That's the logical conclusion to come from the sponsor's legislation. Councilmember Sandberg pointed out that her committee took 3 years to deliver a report. And I wondered why it took so long. Wasn't the issue, there certainly was either the issue is straightforward enough that a report can be generated in a few months, or it's so intractable that it needs years to come up with a report. This is also why the city forms boards and commissions. The difference is the boards and commissions are citizen powered. There may be a member or two from the council who serves on them, but they exist precisely because the 9 of us don't have all the time in the world to think about every issue. I mean, I think that one way in which the sponsors clearly have not thought enough about this issue is that they haven't taken into account the idea that nobody has all day or all year to commit to that. We're a part-time legislative body. So we only have so much time, so much attention. Every one of us has experienced the draining energy when we have to sit through a long meeting, let alone meeting after meeting, when they become compounded, more than one meeting a week, which has been happening in this term. When we have 6 meetings in a 2-week period, each 4 hours long. I mean, we used to just do that during budget. Part of the idea was we break down the work and that the 4 members on a given committee work on behalf of the other 5, not to exclude them from speaking or deliberating. And certainly standing committees have not prevented any member from attending the meeting or listening. If anything, what they should do is, if they had questions that are so important that should be asked in the committee meeting, they can channel it through one of their colleagues. There's only so many of us, we're not that big. But instead, the sponsors are dooming us to be forced to listen to every issue, to send every issue to committee of the whole. And they say that because all 9 of us are concerned about climate, that somehow that means every issue about climate should be, I mean, I don't know everything about climate. I am happy to defer to my colleagues who serve on any given committee to focus on my behalf and to give me the skinny. But instead, what the sponsors want is for all of us to be at every deliberation, even the ones that are optional, the so-called committee ones. So, I think that the sponsors are naive about the climate committee, utterly naive, frankly, that this is not going to, that only when you get people to focus on it, certain people to focus on this, does action happen. Okay, but if what the 9 are basically saying here is with respect to climate, it's going to be the whim of any one member to decide that they're going to get up and do something about it. And they won't have the benefit of a public meeting with 3 other members where they can deliberate on issues, because unless they make it a special committee, an ad hoc committee. I mean, I have more to say, but I'm going to leave it at that. I definitely sponsor Amendment 1. I agree with Amendment 1, and I just urgently wish that the sponsors would reconsider, at least on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Volin. I would like to pause for a moment and ask our council attorney, Mr. Lucas. This is a really important and thorough discussion we're having. it seems like it's probably going to take some time. We have other matters on the agenda. Is it time perhaps to consider postponing this legislation and proceeding with what remains? Is that something worthy of consideration at this point? And I'd like to ask the sponsors if they would, how they would feel about that. But Mr. Lucas, what we're at 9:15 right now. We'll be nearly at 3 hours without getting on to our next topics, our next meeting, actually.
Yes, thank you. I'll just remind the members that under local code, committee meetings scheduled to consider legislation are to begin no later than 9:45. So if it looks like the discussion on this item might extend beyond that time and not allow you to get to the other items on your regular session agenda, I think one option would be to postpone discussion on this resolution to a later date. Certainly next Wednesday's regular session on January 19th might serve as that date. But I would recommend leaving enough time to get to the other agenda items on your regular session so that the committee of the whole can start on time under local code.
Let's have the sponsors weigh in. Council President Sandberg.
Yes, I would agree with the postponement until January the 19th at our next regular session to resume this. My only question would be, we do have an amendment on the floor. Do we just need to leave that where it is and pick up where we left off, or do we need to dispatch with that before we move on?
Mr. Lucas?
I think it's up to the council. If a member would like to make the motion now, I think you could pick this back up next week where you are. If you feel like you can get through this amendment before then making that motion to postpone, that could be an option, but I just recommend whatever you do, getting through the rest of the regular session agenda in time for the committee of the whole to start by 9:45.
Councilmember Flaherty, would you be willing to postpone at this point and pick up where we left off, or do you want some kind of conclusion at this point in terms of your amendment?
I'll defer to I don't have strong feelings about it, I guess.
Okay.
My inclination would be to finish the question pending, but I'll defer to the chair, actually.
Other sponsors, I've heard from Council President Sandberg, Councilmember Scambaluri, Councilmember Sims.
I think, again, I know we have a lot of other business on behalf of the city of Bloomington to get to. I would be willing to postpone.
I would agree with Councilmember Flaherty. Preference is to deal with the question at hand, but also would defer to the chair.
Okay. Why don't we finish, since we're so close, finish the Amendment 1, and then we will entertain a motion to postpone. Councilmember Wallen, did you have a question?
I'd like to remind the chair that every member has the right to speak twice to an issue. I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say, and I'd like to respond to it. There's no way that we're going to get that done before 9:45. So I would respectfully suggest that a postponement is in order, even at this moment.
That's rather hard to assess right now, but we have had a very active debate, and it's true we've heard from, I think, nearly everyone. And so I could see that happen. So would someone like to make a motion to postpone? Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to make the motion to postpone the discussion of Resolution 2202 until our next regular session on January 19th.
I would second. I would also ask the chair, do you need to add to that motion and related amendments?
I think that's a good idea.
I would be happy to add that.
And then I will second.
Very good. So we have a motion and a second. Mr. Lucas, Ms. Lacey, did you understand the motion? Could you restate it?
Yes, I think the motion was to postpone the discussion of this resolution and the related amendments until next Wednesday's regular session, which I think is in order.
Very good. Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll on the motion?
Yes, Councilmember Flaherty,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Volin,
No.
Scambalori,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
and Rallo.
Yes. So that motion passes 7 yes to 2 no. So we will postpone until our next regular session meeting next week. So with that, I will turn the gavel back to Council President Sandberg.
Thank you very much. And we are now ready for legislation for first readings.
Thank you. Pardon me, I've lost my agenda. Yes, Madam President, I move that ordinance 2201 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Scambalori,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
and Flaherty.
Yes.
And will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2201 to amend Title 7 of the Bloomington Municipal Code entitled Animals regarding amending Chapter 7.01, Chapter 7.16, Chapter 7.54, and Chapter 7.56. The synopsis is as follows. Ordinance 2201 establishes the expanded outdoor dining in the downtown corridor program for the continued use of Parklets and Kirkwood Avenue for additional seating space and suspend certain portion of the Bloomington Municipal Code in order to facilitate the program. The program is authorized to continue through October 31st, 2022, and may be extended by an authorizing resolution by the Common Council.
Thank you. Next ordinance.
Madam President, I move that ordinance 2202 be introduced.
Point of
and read
order.
by the-
I see hands raised.
Yes. Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to move ordinance 2201 to second reading at our regular meeting and skip the committee of the whole.
All right, it has been moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, so do we need to have a discussion on that or call the roll on moving that? Could I get some advising from our attorney on how to proceed with this?
I think if there are questions on the motion, you can entertain those. If not, you can proceed to a vote. And if the motion carries, I think the item would not be heard at the committee of the whole tonight and would instead be taken up next week at the regular session.
All right. So are we ready for a vote? Yes, Councilmember Rosenbarger.
I just had a question, I guess, for Councilmember Piedmont Smith. What's your intention, or why do you think it should go to second reading?
I think it's very straightforward. It's an issue that we've already talked about several times and approved twice, this outdoor dining and parklet program. So I do not think it's necessary to have a committee discussion that can go directly to second reading.
All right, any further questions before we call the roll? Councilmember Volon.
Is there an opportunity to comment on the motion?
Certainly.
Is this the appropriate period for that?
Yes, please.
I hope that we don't vote against this motion simply because the people who were asked to speak have been waiting for 3 hours to do so. We should be planning better ahead of time on the possibility that legislation may not need to go to committee. We probably also shouldn't be scheduling committee of the whole on the same night as regular session. It goes to the council's tendency to want to make things more convenient legislatively for itself. But this is exactly the kind of problem that, that goes to the issues of process that we've been debating. I don't think that issues of process are going to go away if the previous ordinance or resolution is successful, and this is a good indication of it. So I would urge my colleagues for I hope that Councilor Piedmont Smith recommends it for all three of these pieces. They're not particularly so momentous that they require even a committee hearing in the whole. Thank you. I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you for that. And will the clerk, if there are no further comments from council, Councilmember Scamillari?
Sure, and this would be directed to Councilmember Piedmont Smith, but if our attorneys wish to chime in as well, please do. Just to confirm, the public would still have ample opportunity to comment in the next regular session, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Flaherty.
I'll add another point just for consideration by my colleagues, which is that if in second reading, having not considered an item of legislation in any committee format, a majority of members were not ready to vote on the question, it could simply go to a third reading. So we are not bound to vote on anything's final resolution if in the very off chance we feel uncomfortable at second reading, if that is the first time we've had public comment.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Thank you. I just have a comment too that I've been thinking about. I think in the past, we've sort of used committee of the whole for like a lengthier presentation and then done shorter presentations at our council meetings. But because we don't take minutes at committee of the whole, I am kind of more inclined to hear full presentations on the record at our regular sessions instead of having those shortened presentations. So I think if it is something that's rather straightforward, no matter what, I want to like always have that full presentation, I think now at second reading.
Thank you. And without further comment, may I call on the clerk to call the roll on sending ordinance 22-01 to second reading.
Madam President, I thought I saw a council member raise their hand for a comment. Did you?
I'm sorry, I missed that. Councilmember Volon, is that it?
Yes, I did have another follow-up. I just want to point out that we have the convenience, thanks to the current schedule of a regular session being only 1 week away. Normally, we would hear committee of the whole the week after it was introduced in the first reading. So we're not going to experience a dramatic delay here in the deliberation of this information. And so all the more reason why I think we should at least approve that tonight for these ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now are we ready to proceed with the roll call? Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
Volin.
Yes.
Scamillari.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
And Smith.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0-0. Moving on to ordinance 22-02.
Madam President, I move that ordinance 22-02 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second?
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Volin,
Yes.
Scambaluri,
Yes.
Sandberg,
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. And will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2202, amending Ordinance 2137, which fixed the salaries of appointed officers, non-union, and ASME employees for all the departments of the City of Bloomington for 2022 regarding COVID premium pay and create a new position in the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance modifies Ordinance 2137, which fixed the salaries of appointed officers, non-union, and ASME employees for calendar year 2022 in order to bring the language in Ordinance 2137 into line with guidance from the State Board of Accounts with regard to COVID-19 premium pay and to add a position to the Department of Economic and Sustainable Development.
Thank you. Now, before we have another motion similar to the one we just heard, I do believe we may need to ask Carolyn Shaw, who would be prepared to be the one to present this in the coming session, an opportunity to speak. But I will go back to council. Is there any motion to, yes, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
I move that ordinance 2202 go directly to second reading at our regular session of January 19th.
Second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. And again, I would like to ask Carolyn Shaw if she would have an opinion about this.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for letting me weigh in here. As I hear this happening, I quickly did some math in my head, and this is one of the amendments during related to COVID pay and police recognition pay. It's, I think, time sensitive. And if there were a hiccup on January 19th with any of this and we had to push it to another week, I think we missed our payroll deadline. I just did some really quick math in my head, and that makes me just a tiny bit nervous because it does have a potential employee impact. And I know none of us will do that. So,
okay.
And we were responding, I'm sorry, we were responding, thank you, President Sandberg. Sorry, we were just responding to really last minute State Board of Account guidelines that we had to scramble on in December to make sure we're compliant with their new guidelines regarding ARPA funding.
Right. Thank you for that input. And with that information, do we have any questions from council or any? No. Not seeing a hand raised. Yes, Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Thank you. I still feel this is very straightforward and just reflects what we've already agreed on. So I stand by my motion and still think that we can get it done on the 19th and not have any delays. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that. Any further discussion from council? All right. Oh, Councilmember Volin.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councilmember Piedmont Smith, even as I share Ms. Shaw's concern, but I also need to point out as diplomatically as I can to Ms. Shaw that, I've heard this many, many times before that legislation of the administration is time sensitive, and that's why we need to act on it faster even than our already normally fast legislative process. And, if there is some deliberation that is required, in this case, I expect I would have heard in advance, maybe in the memo, maybe in conversation with the occasional member that, this is something that we might need to worry about. But I mean, otherwise, I am always reluctant to have the option of council to deliberate constrained by the calendar. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other additional comment? Councilmember Rosenbarger.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate Michelle weighing in here too as well. Just reading the packet, I don't have any questions for it, so I would be happy to just postpone this or move it straight to second reading.
Thank you. Any additional comment from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on moving ordinance 22-02 to a second reading?
Yes, Councilmember Sims.
Yes.
Volin.
Yes.
Scambalori.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Yes.
Flaherty. Smith.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
And Rosenbarger.
Yes.
And that is approved 900. And so we now are ready to move to ordinance 22-03.
Madam President, I move that ordinance 2203 be introduced and read by the clerk by title and synopsis only.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Volin.
Yes.
Scambalori.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Rosenbarger.
Yes.
And Sims.
Yes.
Thank you.
And will the clerk please read?
Ordinance 2203, amending Ordinance 2136, which fixes salaries of officers of the police and fire departments for the city of Bloomington for 2022 regarding COVID premium pay and retention pay. The synopsis is as follows. This ordinance modifies Ordinance 2136, which fixed the salaries of officers of the police and fire departments for calendar year 2022 in order to bring the language in Ordinance 2136 into line with guidance from the State Board of Accounts with regard to COVID-19 premium pay and retention payments.
Thank you. We will now hear from Councilmember Piedmont Smith.
Thank you. I move that ordinance 2203 go directly to second reading at our regular session of January 19th.
Second.
Moved and seconded. And is there any additional discussion from council about the motion? And seeing none, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on the motion to postpone for a second reading or to move to a second reading?
Sorry. Yes, Councilmember Scambalori.
Yes.
Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo.
Yes.
Flaherty.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Piedmont Smith.
Yes.
Rosenbarger.
Yes.
Sims.
Yes.
And Volin.
Yes.
Thank you all. That passes 900, and we are now concluded with our legislation for first readings. We will now move to additional public comment, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to speak on matters that have not been discussed on tonight's agenda. And I will now go to our meeting host to see if there are any hands up for a public comment.
I don't see any raised hands. And I don't have any messages in the chat.
Okay, we will wait just a few minutes. I believe by now we understand how to raise hands and go to the chat if we are not able to do that. And I am not seeing any actions. So let us move to the business of our council scheduling.
Madam President?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate to make a motion to cancel the committee of the whole following this meeting, since we have no legislation to hear?
I believe that certainly is in order, given what we have just done. So again, would this be the time to do this before we discuss council scheduling?
I can chime in and just say that I don't have any additional items for the council scheduling portion of the agenda. So I think now's an appropriate time to consider this motion.
Okay.
Then I will make that motion.
And I will second.
Very good. And any further discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll on the motion to postpone the committee of the whole that was to follow this meeting?
Sorry, was it to cancel or was it to postpone?
Well, it's the cancel.
To cancel, we have no further need of it with what we just did in first read. Yeah.
Just making sure. I thought I must have misheard. Okay, Councilmember Sandberg.
Yes.
Rallo,
Yes.
Flaherty,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Piedmont Smith,
Yes.
Rosenbarger,
Yes.
Sims,
Yes.
Bolin,
Yes.
and Scambalori.
Yes.
And that passes 9-0-0. So our committee of the whole will be canceled for tonight. And that concludes our business for this regular session. And so without further ado, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all for your diligence, and we will see you next time.